can promote things. And that's something that I've done for a lot of events. I think that on the board, I'm the one who recommended we start having committees, and now the school board has begun to do that. It does both alleviate some work on the town council's behalf, because we would do some of the footwork and then come with a recommendation. So it helps with some of the work that you may have to do looking at things, but it also is engaging the community, which I think is really important. That's one of the reasons we started having committees on the school board, is it allowed us to engage community members, and you're really representing them. So you want to make sure that you're engaging them and doing what your community wants. And I do that on the school board, and I would do that also if chosen for the Activities Advisory Committee.
Yeah, the North Allegheny School is ranked number 1 in the state in sports. It's incredible, and number 17th in the country. So they're really a good.
And we are the only school in Pennsylvania that has actually been ranked.
Right.
So in all of Pennsylvania, when you think of how large our state is and how many great teams there are in different school districts, we are the only school district that was ranked. So North Allegheny is great. I myself did get 9 varsity letters when I was in high school, so I was pretty involved in sports.
Excuse me, what does that mean, ranked?
So they rank all of the high schools across the United States, and North Allegheny is the only school in Pennsylvania that is ranked in the top 25 in the U.S. And
there's 17.
Yeah, I thought ranked. I thought ranked.
Ranked nationally.
Ranked nationally in the top 25.
Nationally,
I got you.
we are the only
Excuse
school
my
in
interruption.
Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania is huge, and you can imagine there's, besides just our area, Philadelphia has some fantastic teams. Erie, Harrisburg, any large city would have a school district.
There was a cross-country race in Shanley Park this past Saturday. I was up there to watch my grandson, and North Allegheny came in second. First was Mount Lebanon, and I think North Allegheny was missing one of the top runners. So they're really a fantastic school.
Cross country is the winningest team in North Allegheny. I'm proud to say that I actually participated on the team and was captain of the team when I graduated.
My daughter too.
And I actually ran with her. She was a little bit older than I was, but not much.
I won't tell her you said
that. But it's a great team. I think it's one of the true team sports. You know, you don't win as an individual, and they take your whole team. The top 5 make up your team score and so forth. So it is a true team sport, and I think that's when I talk about educating our students at North Allegheny. One of the reasons I was picked as extracurricular activity chair is because I talk about us graduating with what I call the whole student. And I think it's a combination of extracurriculars with academics that really make a student whole. And there are things that you learn through being on a team that you don't learn in the classroom. You know, my calculus definitely helped me because I taught various math courses at CCAC, so it certainly helped me for that. But being on a team taught me teamwork, taught me how to budget my time, taught me how to be a leader. I might not even be able to sit here and interview had I not had all of those activities and done those kind of things. So I think activities are vital to a person. And they help you health-wise if it's a sport also.
We're going to go down the line and see if, Bill, do you have any questions? Olivia?
I do. Ms. Blackburn, have you had a chance to read the resolution that created this advisory committee?
I have.
And the exhibit associated with it?
I have. I do have an understanding. I've read them both fully. He even talked about them a little bit, the resolution number 20 last year. And I think it's a great thing. I would love to be a part of the group. There is no one who thinks activities are more important to McCandless than I do. I consider it vital to our community members.
Ms. Blackburn, have you reviewed the community activities section of the recently adopted implementable comprehensive plan?
I did.
Okay.
A lot of things on it seem to be centered on a community center as I was looking at the various things that the committee would be looking at doing. And I think that is one of the things that would be looked at, probably a large item that would be looked at by this advisory committee. And I think there's a lot of other sort of, we'll call easy activities we could do. You know, right away, movies at the park. You talk about being at Shenley Park. They always have their movies at the park. It's a very low-cost, wonderful activity for the community, and all ages could participate in that. I know I've done that as an activity at Wentwood Swim Club for the past 4 years.
It's in Bradford Woods.
It is in Bradford Woods, yes. But we need to do something in McCandless like that.
Well, I mean,
So
it would be good to know that where other activities are in other townships, because then you could just recommend going to there.
Right, we have many
Well, we
people
have actually
participate.
begun such a program under, what's the name of that bill?
The McCants Community Association
Yeah, so we have,
They do
is actually
they're showing
started
movies.
doing that.
Yeah.
Good.
You know, there's an old saying, I guess, ask a busy person to get something done and they'll find a way. You're obviously a busy person. You do get an awful lot done. What is your sense of the time commitment to serve on this committee in your mind after reviewing the materials and things, so forth?
So one of the things that I mentioned earlier with being a part of various teams, and I was all through high school and college, is that I learned to budget my time. I am retired, so I have time to give to my community. My parents were very big volunteers in the area. My mom volunteered over 20,000 hours at Passavant Hospital. They said it was the most volunteer hours ever by anyone. And my parents taught me that volunteerism is important. And I was able to retire a little bit younger than maybe some. My husband is still working. And that gives me the time that's necessary to devote to various things. So I think my record stands for itself. They'll tell you at A.W. Beatty, where I have been on their board, that I didn't miss any meetings, and they'll also tell you at the school board, I've been on the school board for over 7 years, and I missed one meeting. My mother had passed away. So I'm very attentive to my community volunteer duties. I would be attentive to this, and I do have the time. I've always budgeted my time. I think that it would take you probably, to answer your question specifically, when you aren't actually doing an activity, you're probably spending 5 hours a week. But when you've got an activity coming, you're probably spending at least 20 hours a week, and it just depends on the activity. But that's how it goes. In all honesty, I have at least 40 hours to spend a week. I'm retired. I don't have another job. And this is what's important to me. My community, I wouldn't have run for school board if my community wasn't important to me. That's a volunteer activity. We not only don't get paid a dime, you actually spend a decent amount of money being on school board, and I do it because of the love for the area that I live. I have been raised here. I love North Allegheny. I want North Allegheny to be great. I live in McCandless. McCandless has won many awards as being one of the best communities in which to live, and I intend to make it even better.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions. Thank you.
If you were selected for this committee, what do you think you would bring to the committee to guide the direction of it?
Well, first of all, I think that being on the school board helps me. I think that I'm able to meet many community members. I think just through my other volunteer activities I've done, I think I know a lot of people. So as far as guiding, I think one of the biggest things you do is you brainstorm and come up with some ideas. And then you talk to people in the community and see if it's something that they think would be important. And depending upon what is seen as an important thing for our community, then you would make a recommendation to all of you. So me knowing a lot of community members and it being in the public so many times at different activities allows people to see me, and then I can give better guidance on what we should be doing.
So your feeling is that you would work as a group or individuals?
No, I think the activity committee works as a group together. Everything I talked about being a part of a team, and it would be a team that would work together to make a recommendation to town council on various activities that we think would be good for our community in McCandless.
Thank you.
I guess it's up to me now, Libby. If I'm next. I don't know who would be if I'm not next. Nice to see you this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're pleased to have you here. First, a very general, trivial question. I wasn't familiar with the term board folders have included transportation. That's a portfolio, I guess. Obviously, that's what it is. But
Each board member is assigned an area.
and that's what that means.
And yes, and they call it your board folder.
Okay.
So each board member is assigned a specific dimension in North Allegheny that
Right.
you're in charge of. I've made it a point to take many different board folders because I wanted to make sure that I understood every aspect. And some people choose to just stay with one. As the most senior board member, they typically the president would allow me to pick my board folder, and I try to vary so that I can get to know
Okay.
all the different people and different aspects.
I noticed here too. That you were the manager of the boys basketball, I guess ice hockey and volleyball teams.
Yes,
That's a lot.
in high school.
That's a lot to undertake.
And I ran cross country and
Yeah,
track,
yeah.
and I
Oh, this is while you were a student.
yes,
Okay.
yes. I did all of
Yeah.
those things as a student. I did the announcements. I represented NA in the math contest. I was the Latin scholar. I
You still
was
managed
really
to
pretty
graduate with
busy.
honors.
I did.
Boy.
I think I was 35th in my class,
That's-
but don't quote me on
School that size, that's very impressive.
And it was as large when I went there as it is now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
North Allegheny has remained a very large school district.
Uh,
I took all of the advanced courses, and really North Allegheny prepared me that I think I could have picked any college or university in the country and been able to go there. North Allegheny really prepared me, and that's one of the things that made me want to be on the school board, is I wanted to make sure our students at North Allegheny were still prepared and could achieve what
You're
they wanted.
Obviously a very dedicated person, Libby. How do you, can you address the question of how you deal with controversy? I think invariably, perhaps more so on the school board than you would expect on the committee for which you're considering for consideration. But how do you have a philosophy or way of dealing with disagreements among the members of the committee on the votes and so forth? How do you-
Well, I do, and so honestly, probably the part on my resume that had the most controversial people to deal with was I was a flight attendant for over 27 years. And I will tell you, there are many arguments that take place, especially when an aircraft is late or, there's a lot of things that take place there. And my supervisor would tell you I had more good letters every year than any of his other flight attendants, and he had over 200 every year. I am actually very customer service oriented, and I think, as the saying goes, kill them with kindness. So I think if two people are having an altercation, you try to get them to calm down. You point out to this person the good things that this person was trying to do, and you point out to that person the reason that this person
Can I
is
clarify my
arguing.
question? I wasn't asking how you deal with, I didn't intend to at least.
Okay.
How you deal with people who are arguing with you, for less of a better way to put it. But just differences of opinion that in voting, one person wants X, the other person wants Y, and the board's divided. How do you approach that? Sometimes there
I
are.
think you lay out the pros and
Yeah.
cons of the two opposing sides. And when you look at the pros and cons of each side, you can decide which side is probably correct. I make decisions all the time on the school board, and sometimes your decisions are controversial,
Yeah.
but you have to make the best decision you can. And I stand behind my decisions, and I give people reasons for why I voted the way I did. I can't say they're always printed, my reasons,
Yeah.
but I do say them publicly at the board
Yeah.
meeting. And I think that that's how you make decisions, and a lot of times people are going to have a difference of opinion. And you probably look at both sides, and what's great about differences of opinion is as people each give their point of view, it allows you to make a better decision once you hear all of the different points of view.
Just one final question. Where do your boys go to college?
My son Grant goes to Duquesne. He's in pre-law and on the dean's list. And my son Spencer is currently also getting all A's, and he's playing baseball at Glenville State University.
Okay, thank you very much.
So
Okay.
they're both enjoying college and doing well.
Great.
That's a plus.
Yes, so, but it also gives me more time because my children are sort of
Yeah.
taking care of themselves in school now, so I have the time to devote to my community, and I hope that I get that chance.
Okay, good then.
Thank
I mean,
you.
Levy.
That's-
Okay, any other questions?
No,
Okay.
thanks very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you for your time.
thank you,
Here, let's reach across, let me move.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Always nice to see you. Thank you.
Okay, our next candidate is Marcia. Wanna come up?
Caliendo.
Yeah. I had it on the tip of my tongue,
know.
Caliendo. Caliendo, yeah, I guess, okay. Hi, Marcia. We all know Marcia.
Good evening.
Good evening, Marcia. You heard me, I started my spiel. Why don't you just tell us something about yourself and this committee, how you would work out in this committee?
Sure.
Okay?
And thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. I am a 26-plus year resident of McCandless. I grew up in the city and lived also in Moon and Hopewell before I decided to move to McCandless. And been here, and my husband and I recently just moved, and it took us a year to find a place because we were insistent that we wanted to stay, and we were going to stay in McCandless.
Mhm.
So and we really have developed a love of the community, and so it's very important for us to give back to that community. And so we're both involved in various aspects. And I was semi-retired, so I have the ability to give back. My job for 12, 14 years spent a lot of time on the road traveling. And I will attest to Ms. Blackburn's conflict resolution on airplanes, because I was on plenty of them. So it's important that we give back to the community. And so I have gotten involved this year with Community Days, helping them out a little bit this year, and I've enjoyed that, reading the comprehensive plan, the importance of the Activities Advisory Committee, and the task that they will be given. I think is pretty big. I see it as a two-pronged approach with exploring, don't we get a community center, and at the same time, and just as important, what can we do to increase the number of activities? I really was quite surprised when I read the comprehensive plan about the variance of how many of the other communities, what else they do and some of the other programs we do. And I think for little or no money, we can easily do that.
Mhm.
So I see really a bifurcated approach with the advisory committee and working towards that goal. And so.
Okay, good, very good. No?
Yes, Ms. Callahan. So you reviewed the, I know were you part of the steering committee?
No,
Oh,
no, I was not.
You attended meetings. a number
I
of
attended
meetings,
meetings. I attended the August meeting where the public opinion was there, and
Yes.
then last month when the last meeting a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
we voted on it.
And you've reviewed the advisory committee exhibit and legislation?
You know, I did not read it word for word. I think I was at the meeting when you adopted it.
Mhm.
So that I read both, as I said, the comprehensive plan and the appendices, which was 3 times as much as what was in the comprehensive plan.
It was?
Yeah.
looking at that
Mhm.
document, and actually, it's a beautiful document because I think it really helps form the basis of what this committee is going to be doing and the job that they're tasked with.
Mhm.
Yeah, luckily it had a lot of pictures in it.
We like pictures.
Yeah.
We like pictures.
Can you describe for me the time commitment that you believe that this committee will require and that you're willing to make on the committee?
Well, I wouldn't be here if I was not going to be involved and devote whatever time needed to be.
Mhm.
I certainly see the first few years of this committee being somewhat of a pretty labor-intensive time commitment. Because, as I said, of this, what I envision, obviously what the council wants us to do, as well as what the rest of the members of the committee want us to do, the bifurcated approach with developing the activities and getting the community involved with that, as well as exploring, do we want a community center? And if we do, the very large task of how do we do it? I think many people agree that it's a very desirable thing to do, but we all know that the devil's in the details, and the devil is in where do we get the funding, and that is paramount. And I think that's a great task. So I envision, a lot of hours going into it,
Okay.
and I'm willing to do that.
Okay. Can you suggest to us a couple of examples of how your background and experience, both professionally and volunteer-wise,
Mhm.
will serve you in this community in this position?
Sure. I also was raised with giving back, and from the time I was in high school through college and into my professional career, really have been involved with volunteer efforts. The only time I really wasn't doing it is when I was doing a significant amount of travel for my job. It really made it very difficult at that point in time. But I've been involved with Special Olympics, doing volunteering for the floor hockey team, and I also assist with tax preparation through the United Way VITA program, and that is once a week we go down to the Veterans Leadership down in the Strip District and help people complete their taxes. I have been involved many years with my sorority, both on a local and national level,
I saw that.
and so learning how to multitask and learning the leadership goals that you need.
Got it. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Marcia, if you were on this committee, what do you envision your job to be?
I envision my job to be at the direction of town council. I envision this, what I think that might be, and hopefully should be, is the exploration, an exploratory committee on, do we really want and need and can afford a community center? and also develop activities and programs throughout the community for all levels and all aspects, and to help to coordinate that, and to work in association with and to complement the various churches, the McCandless Community Association, and all the other nonprofits and whatever that may be doing some assistance, do some activities in McCandless. I by no means feel that we should be competing with anybody.
Thank you.
We're all here
Glad to
to
hear you say
complement
that.
one another, not to compete.
Thank you. That was the right thing to say.
Thank you.
That's what I was waiting to hear.
No, this isn't a contest.
Right.
This is not a contest.
We're all working on the same team.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Marcia, you mentioned the community center, or whatever name we attached to it, I think at least 4 times in just a brief remarks you made. Am I correct in my assumption that you sort of at least initially made up your mind that that's something we ought to be doing?
I made up my mind it's something that we really should legitimately explore.
Okay.
I've been to Pines Community Center, Hamptons, Ross's, and they have some beautiful facilities. And I do think that there is a lack of space, meeting spaces in our area. And I think a community center could alleviate that issue. I am one opinion on a group of 7 potentially on a committee. I'm a team player. I will, we're going to explore this if that's the task we're given by council. But I'm only one
Yeah.
voice of 28,000. And so I think it should be explored. Do we do it? I'm not sure we can.
You mean
I like to think we can.
From a financial
From
standpoint.
a financial perspective, looking at the plan, and they're talking about $3.5 to $4 million, that is not something we want to take lightly by any stretch of the imagination.
Possibly more than that too, with operating costs and
Right.
Lord knows what else.
I like to think that it will eventually be able to sustain itself and potentially become a revenue producing, with the various meeting rooms, with a fitness center, with renting it out for, weddings and graduation parties and whatever. I would hope, and we really need to know that it will be something that can help sustain itself. You cannot keep putting money into something that may, for as much as everybody may want.
No.
And I know there's a lot of division. I mean, the 52% that said they thought it was desirable was not an overwhelming majority. So we need to make sure that this is something that the community wants.
And do we have enough open ground?
And do we have enough open ground? And
What would you regard as, once we get past, I think all of us have at least a general idea of the positives and negatives of a community center. But before I leave that one, because I did want to explore one other thing, there is a lot of space. I hear people saying, gee, there's not sufficient space for meeting rooms and so forth. Don't we have like the schools and churches, and we've got 13 churches here in McCandless, and a lot of other places. I think if somebody took a real good look at that, they could think of places where they could meet. I just throw that out as a.
well, that was addressed in with the appendices,
Right.
and there was listed the rooms and the spaces. But there are some organizations that limit the school, very strict, as they should have, guidelines for anybody walking inside that school. There's that application and there's requirements. And the churches are the same way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people are becoming a little bit more guarded about who they want to give a room to. Unfortunately, and I do think the appendices showed a lot of rooms. Is it enough? Again, I think that's part of the exploration process.
That's why
of do we need it or not?
I don't think there was a groundswell of interest in a community center. It was sort of, at least as a person who was on the committee myself, I thought they kind
Yeah.
of got wedged in at the last
Yeah.
minute, so to speak.
Yeah.
And, which I thought was a little bit off-putting, but we're not here to discuss that. But beyond the community center, what other areas do you think are, that your committee might really be challenged by? Have you given thought to the other activities,
Other types of activities
Yeah.
that we could do? I think we can, first thing that comes to mind is that a community blood drive. Not only would it be something that we could bring the community,
No, I thought that was good. I
We've
mean,
already discussed it.
I had not heard that. A community blood drive, and what more, the gift of life, the gift of blood, and to help out. The
it shows that
communities.
we're a caring community.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
exactly. But also I can see working within the neighborhoods, and if a specific neighborhood wants to try to organize a block party, what can we do to help facilitate that so that the neighborhood could congeal more with each other? So at a small level, like a block party, to group Tai Chi classes, and then working with some of the other organizations. I'm thinking a community flea market. Open up the park down here and have people, again, anything that is a gathering of people, should foster the sense of community. And I think we have a good start in McCandless. As I said, we
I think
looked
it's
a year
great.
for a house because we were insisted
That's
upon
it.
staying in McCandless.
your actions are a testament to your feelings. But thank you very much for your consideration of
Well, thank
the
you.
committee and your thoughtful remarks tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
Some good ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcia.
Thanks. Nice to formally meet you, but. Good to see you. See you Saturday. Yeah.
Very good to see you again.
Thanks.
Okay, our next candidate is Cheryl Campbell. Is that right? Cheryl? Okay.
No Cheryl's out here.
No Cheryl? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
Kelly Morris.
yeah, Kelly Orris. Kelly Orris? Hi, Kelly. I don't know whether you were in when I read the part of the resolution number 19. You may not have been in now. So, okay. So the Activity Advisory Committee is a newly established committee by resolution number 20 of 2019. It is a committee to help develop and promote new civic engagements and support existing civic engagements. It is to develop and schedule activities and/or programs for the town. Let me read from Exhibit A of that resolution number 20, item number 1. Initial and ongoing location, assemblage, and prioritizing of community resources, including facilities, personnel, and equipment for possible activities. Would you tell us just briefly about yourself, okay?
So one of the biggest reasons I think that I'm here, and Bill is familiar, I'm currently on the McCandless Community Association Board.
Okay.
And when I saw this opportunity, not to jump too far ahead, but I thought if I could somehow get involved with this as well, and maybe at a certain point, McCandless Community Association could be absorbed by town council and be a separate committee there. I think that we have a great start. We have a couple years of activities and events, very, very well attended. I think I know just from doing fundraising for our events, for our association, there's already a lot of confusion in the community. They think that we are part of the township council, like under that umbrella. And it's a little bit difficult to explain, but I think that we have a great start with things, and then the addition with this, I think combining them somehow ultimately down the road would be best for everybody involved.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yes, Kelly. Councilman Wiskoskis did read some cliff notes from the resolution and the exhibit. Have you had a chance to read it?
I did not read the resolution. I did read the plan, and I did read the appendix.
Oh, okay, the community activities
Yes,
section.
uh-huh.
Okay. Can you describe for me, in understanding the reason for this committee, explain to me your understanding of the time commitment that you believe would be required to serve on this committee?
I would guess initially, probably the first year, between 12 and 20 hours a month, probably.
And one of the things in the exhibit was a section in there that talked about collaboration with other organizations in the municipality that are already providing programming, and to not compete as Ms. Calienda brought up, but to rather to collaborate, facilitate. How do you see the absorption of the McCants Community Association into the government as creating a collaboration there for that?
Not into the government per se.
Oh, I thought you were making part of the town.
Maybe I misspoke.
Yeah.
I see the two in complete tandem, and one lending the other, and vice versa, more gravitas, and more exposure and more resources. Is that a little more clear?
So you don't object to nonprofits providing programming in the town and the town facilitating that activity, that effort?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
No.
Good. Yeah, I didn't think so.
No. No, I've gotten a lot out of serving on that committee, so that's another reason why I'm here. And I'm, my career is I research, I analyze, and I synthesize data. Mine happens to be human intelligence, but, that can be applied to many different things.
Can you just, in your own words, kind of describe for us what you believe the primary purpose of this advisory committee is for the town council?
To do the legwork in exploring the options and the information and the data and advising the council.
Okay. And lastly, can you suggest some examples for me based
Too
on
many
your
questions. You're taking all my questions.
based on your experience and your background? Thank you.
I'll
Thank
take
you,
a
Ms.
repeat.
Bowers. Suggest a couple of examples based on your experience and your professional background as well. How you'll dovetail that experience and knowledge to serve on this committee to benefit the community.
So I guess number one, my personality. I'm fairly bright. I'm sophisticated, polished. I'm able to speak to professionals on their level. Not intimidated. I mean, I'm thinking of things like fundraising and approaching, people in that regard. I was on the marketing committee at St. Sebastian, which is Holy Cross Academy now, for several years, and that was almost advisory in that we kept an eye on the numbers, on enrollment. We figured out what we needed to do to get more attention, but we always went to the principal and the top brass with what we thought. So it was kind of advisory.
Very similar.
So those are the main things that I can think of,
Okay, well,
and
thank
then
you.
again, just what I said, I spend every day doing research analysis and synthesis of information, so,
Perfect. All right.
okay,
Thanks so much.
sure thing, thank you.
If you were chosen for this committee, would you come to the committee with, maybe do you have a list of ideas of things that you would like to see done
I
in
do.
places?
I do, especially the ideas. To me, the biggest thing is it's got to be something for everybody. Especially that we have a lot of elderly in McCandless. We have to have events geared toward them so that they don't feel forgotten. Families, young children, maybe even some, I don't know what our community looks like as far as singles, but my approach as far as ideas for events would be something for everyone, and kind of extrapolating from what we've done so far with the MCA.
And in the process of having these programs, you would be willing to go out and look for places that we could have them?
Sure,
Okay.
sure. To touch on the idea of a community center, and after reading the plan, and I'm kind of down the middle, I can see why people support it, I can see why people don't. I know just from the work, there's a couple things with that. What McCandless lacks, in my opinion, and I've only been a resident for about 6 years, what they lack at this point is a nucleus. We don't have a main street, we don't have a downtown. That would provide that for sure, but the expense is phenomenal. And it would have to be, I think it would have to be done without any tax burden whatsoever. So it would have to be done private funds, naming rights, grants, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you,
Okay.
thank you.
Yes, but as
Even
far
though
as.
Mr. Kirk jumped in there ahead of me.
But as far as
He's
approaching,
like
I have no trouble approaching facilities and such. What you lose, in having each event at a different place is you lose the streamlining of the whole thing and the consistency, and everybody knows this is the place to go, for any of these community events. But honestly, I don't think I've ever approached anybody with regard to like using their facilities that was hostile, or there are oftentimes conflicts, like, no, you can't have it because X,
Or
Y, and
something
Z.
else, right.
But, everybody in the community is very open to doing what they can and helping.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Kelly, if I may use your first name, I hope that's
Sure,
okay.
sure,
Bill,
absolutely.
right. You mentioned a moment ago, and I agree with that sentiment, that as wonderful as McCandless is, we sort of have there's no there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Now, McCandless Crossing has some potential for doing that, but even the smaller communities, such as within McCandless, Ingomar, there's an Ingomar, there's a place that we refer to as Ingomar,
yep.
and
And
I
I'm
think-
Allison Park.
Yeah, well, I have less of a Allison Park. I don't think of Allison Park quite as a
Distinct.
identifiable,
Yeah,
distinct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that would really help us. Now, whether in the event of the community center or something like a community center solves that problem, I don't know. But I do see. I think that's what you're alluding to. That might. We have so much infrastructure already here.
Yeah.
Is what I see the problem, and maybe. Well, what I'd like to hear you, rather than give my thoughts. What are your thoughts? You have a lot of professional skills, I see, and experience in investigation of various sorts, including, I guess, are you technically a paralegal, or are you?
No, I'm a licensed
but
private
you worked as a
Years
paralegal
ago.
type function,
Mhm.
yeah. How do you see those skills that professional skills that you developed in your work, helping you analyze problems that would be coming before you in the committee?
Well, I think it's a combination of my professional experience, and again, I hate to say it, my personality. I'm a people person. I was raised by a psychologist, so I know how to disarm people. I know, it's the professional skills plus the personality set, really. And did I answer your question?
I think you did. I mean, it's pretty hard to answer. Spend 10 minutes answering an in-depth, but
If I didn't,
no, but I think you did. I really appreciate it. I was impressed with your comments and what you presented on paper here too. It's I think you would be an asset to the committee, and as the other people who have too. That's one of the difficulties with it.
did you all get a lot of interest?
Well, we have
14, do we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is the goal to still try to get one from each ward,
Yeah, that's
Yes.
if
cool.
possible?
one from each ward. You mean ward? Is that what you said? Ward?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I have.
And if you don't mind my asking, do you all have an opinion as to what the time commitment would be?
No.
No,
we're
Not
lucky.
at this point, anyway.
okay.
I can tell you this though: the time for any task, including the task of being on council, has a way of unbelievably expanding.
I know,
You know,
I know.
and it's true with almost anything.
I know. I will say also, for the most part, I mean, not that I do have conflicts sometimes with my work, because I'll get assignments sometimes within 24 hours notice or something from a client, but I only have one child, and he's a freshman in high school this year. So I think part of what I'm doing as well at this point in my life is looking to fill a void. And I think,
Okay.
doing things for the community would be very satisfying.
Thank you. You have an impressive resume.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions. Maybe others do.
No.
Thank you very much.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thanks a lot, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Realize you're my constituents. You realize that's the 7th Ward.
Oh, is
I
that
represent
right?
the 7th Ward. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Did I
realize.
treat you okay?
Yeah. You're the best.
Thanks.
No, you just got fired.
I'm not running this time anyway, so don't get too excited about it.
Oh, you're not?
Okay. Jack Casey? Do you want to be called Jack?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you want to come?
Sure.
Okay, sure. Did you, were you here when I was reading some of the introductory stuff?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll go over it again. The Activity Advisory Committee is a newly established committee by resolution number 20 of 2019. It is a committee to help develop and promote new civic engagements and support existing civic engagements. It is to develop and schedule activities and/or programs for the town. Let me read from Exhibit A of Resolution 20, number 1, which had adopted this committee. Number 1 says, initial and ongoing location assemblage and prioritizing of community resources, including facilities, personnel, and equipment for possible activities. With that in mind, tell us something about yourself.
Okay. Well, my family moved to North Hills area back when I was 5 years old. And I went to all local schools. I went to North Hills High School. I was the class president in 1972. I know no one was born here probably at the time.
72, I graduated in 71. I mean, I graduated in 61.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Which school?
North Catholic.
North Catholic, okay. Well, that was my option too, but I went to North Hills.
Okay.
grew up in Pittsburgh, loved Pittsburgh, decided I'd go to Duquesne University because I didn't want to leave Pittsburgh. And so I left the house when I was 17 years old, and I worked my way through college as a brakeman on the railroad. I then became a conductor and a train master and yard master, train master, salesman, sales manager. I worked my way all the way up the railroad hierarchy for 22 years, and then my company, which happened to be, I hired out in Penn Central, it became Conrail, and I went to the Denver Rio Grande, and we purchased the Southern Pacific, and then Union Pacific bought them, and they offered me a job over in Los Angeles, Dallas, or Omaha, and I said, no, thank you. I'm a Pittsburgher. I'm staying here. I had 5 kids at the time. We lived up off Pine Creek Road in the Oak Ridge plant. So I had 5 kids. I figured it was easier for one person to make a change than about 70 people when you take both of our families into account. So I became a banker. I went to Mellon Bank, and I was a banker there until my division got acquired by another bank, which was subsequently bought by U.S. Bank. So far I've had all these jobs, and I hired twice. So through all the acquisitions.
So with 5 kids, you must have ran into activities.
Yes, sir. We were in every single activity I think you could imagine. I mean, you know, they went to Jewards, they played Tiger Pride football, they cheerleaded, they swam, they did wrestling, they did all kind. And I was on a lot of these boards as a board member. And matter of fact, I was president of the North Hills Wrestling Association back in the day too. So, you know, we love the community. Kids got a lot out of it. 5 of my kids went to North Allegheny. They all ended up going to the college of their choice. They all picked the careers of their choice, and they've all made a nice living thanks to their education here at North Allegheny.
Okay, great. Bill?
Sure. Mr. Casey, have you had a chance to read the resolution and the overview?
Yes.
So was there anything on there, any questions that brought to your mind?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you have a chance to review the community activity section?
I did.
In the comprehensive plan?
There was a mistake in it. Between
I was going to ask you if you wanted to comment on that review.
1940s and 1950, it showed it was a negative decrease, but it showed it as a percentage, like an 85% increase, and I thought that was peculiar. But other than that, I thought it was rather interesting. It really made me think a lot about our community. We are really rich with all the resources we have when you consider, you know, the Northland Library, the North Park, community college. We've got a lot of assets and a lot of opportunities that other communities simply don't have.
Mr. Casey, can you describe for us the time commitment that you believe serving on this committee will be required?
I'm not exactly sure what your thoughts are on it, but I retired last year, about last October, and so time doesn't really bother me like it would. So I'm pretty open-ended when it comes to being available. Although my wife does have me babysitting quite a bit.
And you do more of that as you go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you get older.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
That's a fair answer. Can you describe for us in your own words what you believe the primary purpose of this Activities Advisory Committee is to the Town Council?
Well, it seems to me that there's a consideration that we might want some facilities, but we certainly need to step up our game, because in comparison to all the other communities around us, you know, we had 19 events last year, and Pine Richland had 80. If we're going to continue to be a competitive place to live, we really need to ramp up our activity in the community. And which brings me to the point, now that I'm retired, I think a lot of people my age tend to want to move out of the community after they raise their kids, because they're, you know, well, I really think our taxes are very fair compared to the rest of Allegheny County. But a lot of people tend to leave after they reach a certain age, after the kids get out of school, because they don't want to pay the taxes. So, you know, maybe we'll keep some older people around if we have some more activities for them.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Jack, if you were on this committee, would you come with ideas of things that we could do, that you're saying that we do need more activities? So would you come with ideas?
I would not only do that, but I would go out and I would see the different communities and what they had to offer. My first experience with a community was, I think I was in 6th grade, and we took a bus ride, some church group or something. And we went down to We're in West Virginia, and they had a beautiful community center down there and offered all kinds of things for kids. And I thought that was really great. Now, recently, I've been over to North Hills, and they've got a beautiful community center. And I was over, where was I? I was over at a funeral over in Turtle Creek and got there early, so I was driving around, went up Ice House Road, and even Wilmerding had a community center. And I'm thinking, you know, what on earth are we doing? You know, we're a pretty fluent community. We need to probably be doing more.
Well, as you come, as you would come to this committee with ideas, would you be willing to go out and search for places to do these activities?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Did you say you went to school at Duquesne University?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, me too. And back when we went there, it was a different place than it is today.
It sure was.
But I thought, I was interested, you worked for the railroad.
Yes.
And I thought you were going to say, as you came halfway through your presentation, that you had to take a pay cut when you were in pretty good money working for the railroad when you were
Yes, sir.
going to college, which is a great thing.
Yeah, paid my way through.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Pretty
Kids
hard.
don't have that opportunity today.
Precisely, you just took the words out of my mouth. They don't have that opportunity
We
today.
took trains up and down all these rivers, and there were business after
Yeah,
business,
yeah.
you know,
What did they
everything
hold?
to do with the steel industry.
Coal and
It's
coke
all
and that sort of stuff. That moved?
Coal, coke, steel,
Yeah.
you know, iron ore, ingots, you know, pipe.
Okay, well, I don't have any. I've listened carefully to what you've said. I'm very impressed by it. And it sounds like you have a really great family, 5 kids. That's an activity in itself. That's sort of
It was a treat.
Okay, well, thanks for coming in and talking.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed your remarks.
Thank you.
I have no questions. Thanks for coming in.
Okay, Jack?
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Bob. Good to see you. Lee says hi. John Lee.
Good to see you.
Good seeing you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you. Thank you. Good seeing you.
Jack, thanks for coming around.
My pleasure.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, our last candidate is Nick Mance. Nick? is Nick here?
I missed this because this was not on
He was scheduled for 8 o'clock.
the website. It says 7:30 start.
What do we
Yeah,
do
yeah,
about that?
it did on the website. It did on the regular website.
What do we do if he comes at 8? Maybe just adjourn for a brief time and talk to him.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the regular meeting, so you can just keep on rolling.
Yeah.
It's part of the community meeting. So you can just sort of stop where you are on the agenda and take them if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, would I take just a brief recess?
Yeah, we'll take a read.
I agree. She wants to turn the recording on.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. At this time, I'd like to call the Services Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda is Fire Marshal's report for the month of July 2019 and the permit report for August of 2019. Fire Marshal Stack, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. As you can see from the report, July was another extremely busy month for the 3 fire companies. We had a total of 97 calls in July. A lot of those were due to storm-related incidents. With that 97 calls, that brings us to a year-to-date of 530 calls. So we're well ahead where we normally do. We may break 1,000 calls this year if if this pace keeps up. July also was good to the false fire alarms. We were able to pull $200 in, adding $4,800 into the sinking fund account. It is under the comments page up front, just a couple of things that we attended. I attended a fire department strategic planning class and through the PSATs up in the Butler County area. And where's my note? There it is. Second page. The 29th of July, I conducted a live fire evacuation training at Passman's Daycare. And on August 22nd, the chief, myself, and Detective Egley, and the SROs, and a number of other paramedics. We had a emergency services training at the North Allegheny Intermediate for all the teachers and staff prior to them taking class. So it was well attended and a lot of great training, a lot of good comments came from that. Also on the 24th of August, myself and Detective Egley, we did a active shooter awareness for all the new student orientation at the LaRoche University. So they're going to put that into their regular schedule every year now from here on in. Unfortunately, but it's something that we have to consider now, unfortunately. Any questions?
I have one, sir.
Yes.
Fire Inspector 3 certification.
Yes.
Can you tell us what that entails?
Certainly. The class itself was a 16-hour course, or no, I'm sorry, a 48-hour course.
40 hours.
40-hour course. And it was put through. I was one of the first classes for the class rewrite in the entire state of Pennsylvania, and it was taking a lot of the code, dissecting it, and trying to make sure that we can apply it in different aspects. We did a lot of field tests with a lot of different type of specialized fire suppression systems and suppression system alerting detection systems. We toured a lot of the large buildings, one of them being the USX Tower in the city of Pittsburgh, and we were able to take it, dissect it, and see how we could apply the new codes as they work today. So it's pretty interesting.
Okay. Well, thanks for getting that
Sure.
training. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Are there any questions from council at this time?
Just have one question.
Yes, sir.
Under response by type of incident, I see that mutual aid has 98 responses for 2019. Is that a lot, or where are those folks going? That's when we go to the assistance of some other municipality, right?
You're correct, sir, yes.
Yeah.
That could be any of the outlying. It kind of breaks it down a little bit more if you look at the as to where we go. Automatic alarms, mutual aid. Sorry, excuse me, 1 second. On the, I don't know what page number it is, but if you keep flipping back, Bill, you'll see where we go. A lot of them, we go to Ross Township, Franklin Park, Hampton, Ohio Township, Wexford, Westview, Shaler.
So it's really spread out pretty well.
Yeah, so we break it down as to how many times we
Okay.
respond into the various municipalities.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Sure.
Are there any other questions from council? Are there any questions from the public? Yes? Please come up to the microphone. State
I
your
already
name.
gave him a heads up. Phyllis Brannon.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask that with the upcoming community days and the fireworks that are going on, that you park a fire truck at the stables across the street. There was a big barn fire in Mars last Saturday and they lost 5 horses, and it was due to fireworks. So, when you have a barn over there that was built in the 1800s, it takes minutes that you don't have for things to go south. And yes, fireworks have landed in the driveway. I know the fallout zone's over there, but unfortunately, things happen. Just asking for a fire truck parked in the driveway, that's all.
Could you identify, you stated your name, what's your address, where do you live?
I live on Marmion, but my horses and the riding
What is
programs,
what is your address for the record, that's all?
8052 Marmion.
Thank you.
Well, so, that's all.
Well, thank you for your
Thank you.
comments. Are there any other comments from the public? Marshal Stack?
I just wanted just to read the answer. If we have the available manpower, we certainly will have a staffed unit at the barn. However, if we don't have one for that particular location, we do have numerous at different locations throughout. So if an incident should occur, we would be there fairly quick. So we have no other
Comment?
member, they'll be there.
Okay. If there are no other comments, the fire service, or the services committee is adjourned.
Who call to order the Public Works Committee meeting? Item 2 on the agenda is Public Works Activity Report, August 2019.
Good evening. Once again, August was a little bit of a wet month for us, so we were somewhat delayed in some of our tasks that we wanted to perform, but we did get in the Potter Park, as indicated on there, we had a large number of trees that at some point one of the storms had come down in the pond and blocked the road and caused some washouts on the road. So we spent a considerable amount of time back there cleaning up those trees, getting them out of the pond, and repairing the road. Other than that, most of the work that took place through the month was backfilling curbs after the roads were paved. And we got up into Brook Park Manor and started to work on redoing those up there because when we did them the first time, it poured down rain for a few days and washed a lot of it out. And what didn't get washed out burned with the week or so of 90-degree weather that we had afterwards. So we're trying to get back up there to get that redone again for folks. And other than that, we're about ready for Community Day. So if you folks have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them for you.
Council have any questions?
Just like to say thank you for all your help for Community Day.
Is there any public comment on the agenda item? Hereby close the Public Works Committee meeting.
Okay, call to order the zoning committee meeting. First item on the agenda is to review the preliminary and final subdivision application for the plan known as Blazer Drive Subdivision Plan Number 3 for McCandless Square Senior Housing LLC located on Blazer Drive, formerly the Trader Horn / Bailey's Fitness Center property. Do you want me to read this second?
You know what, there are actually 3 parts to this, so you might as well read
Yeah.
that one, and I'll just mention the third one.
Okay, review the preliminary and final land development application for the plan known as McCandless Square Senior Living for McCandless Square Senior Housing LLC for 1 3-story personal care home and 13 1-story 2-family dwellings located on Blazer, formerly Trader Horn Bailey's Fitness. Again, it's the same area. The 1-story 2-family dwellings, there's 13 of them, and so that means 26 single-family dwellings.
You got the subdivision there, Jerry? So, the way we wrote this ordinance was, we wanted to have flexibility within the plan so that we're not going to have setbacks from building to building when we do the subdivisions. So what we did was the ordinance created a master planning process where all the perimeter plans, all the perimeter setbacks and buffer zones are established in the beginning, and then any subdivision which takes place within the plan has flexibility so that you don't have to have like a 50-foot setback between the subdivision line, the lot line, and the building. So it'll give a lot more flexibility. So what we did, and Jerry and Mike, we have Jerry Klodowski and Mike Hudek from Mike is from Continental, Jerry's from CEC. So one of you guys want to talk about the subdivision and what you're doing with the subdivision? Oh, there's one more part to the subdivision where there was, when we had the Walmart subdivision, all these lots were combined and they dedicated a piece of ground for the road widening that was going to take place as part of the Walmart plan. So what this group is asking is that we give that, we never accepted it, but we still have to vacate it. So we also have that within the subdivision plan. Go ahead, Mike.
So in part, this is a consolidation of a couple of lots into one lot, and then a subdivision into 3 lots that represent the components of the master plan. The lot to the north, lot number 1, is relative to the retail development. Lot number 2 is relative to some of the common areas, and the senior housing, which when we talk about the land development application, it's primarily on that lot 2. And then lot 3 is our flex parcel. So forthcoming, with after the subdivision, after this land development application, would be 2 other applications for lot 1 and lot 3 as far as the plans for those developments.
So, and as I said, we'll get into this a little bit in the land development process, but the setbacks are all from the roads and from the property lines, these property lines. They won't be from these property lines within. And that, like I said, that gives them flexibility to develop the parcels as they see fit.
So each of the 3 lots are separately financed or will be separately financed. So that's really the reason for us doing this. But it was crucial with the zoning amendment to maintain those internal lot lines such that we could have a seamless project. So as you view it, it didn't look like 3 different properties.
So will that be developed all at the same time?
As our application includes development of the infrastructure, so the earthwork, the utility infrastructure that would enable all development to occur, and the roadways and sidewalks. But each of these properties will have their own individual applications for development for the parking lots, the buildings themselves, and the landscape around the buildings and utility connections. So there will be, in addition to our application, an application maybe in the next 4 to 6 months from Kevin for the retail component, and then sometime in the future for lot 3, there'll be a developer, maybe us, standing in front of you for that application.
So this has changed from the last layout that we saw. But am I just looking simply at the Trader Horn and Bally's footprints there?
Yeah, we could talk about that when we talk about the master plan and get into that land development application. It really hasn't changed. The biggest adjustment that we had to make since our sketch plan back in October 2018 is there are some wetlands that exist between the 2 buildings, and we had to avoid those.
Right, that's where the 3-story was originally.
Yeah, so we had to push it north. So it made some adjustments, but really not much of an adjustment. And again, when we go through the presentation, you'll see on the master plan.
Yeah, I guess I sort of started ahead of everything. We have been reviewing this since October as a concept and as an ordinance change. So there have been a lot of reviews. Planning Commission has had 2 official reviews of the project, and the Planning Commission had some suggestions for some changes which took place.
So one question that's been in my mind since I heard some recently disturbing news down in Ross Township. You know, a lot of this has been predicated on the idea that this is going to be for senior living, low impact. What recently happened in Ross Township was there were a number of senior developments there that were sold as senior, and then much to the chagrin of some of the senior residents, they just flipped it and said, well, we're not going to have just senior living here, it's going to be regular residential. Do we have any protections before we give all these special things away to ensure that this is in fact and remains a senior living development?
Yeah, I have an answer to that question, but let Mike address that first.
Well, I was going to say from a zoning perspective, there is a requirement of 50% commercial. So if you're talking about flipping this product to something that was more residential in nature, you would have a hard time meeting that 50% commercial requirement.
Yeah, I wasn't speaking to the commercial component. I'm relatively comfortable.
Well, what I can also say to you is we actually have submitted our building permit application for the personal care home. We haven't done it for the cottage homes purposely because that's 13 separate building permit applications. So we didn't want to overwhelm the system, but we've actually submitted our building permit application for that personal care home.
So what Mike referred to is our ordinance does require 50% of the property to use commercially, we are considering the personal care assisted living to be a commercial endeavor. This parcel, however, could be, well, any use could be converted to residential within this plan, but we have to maintain that 50%. Once we approve this, we're stuck with the parking requirements, which are less than the parking requirements for apartments. If this was apartments or condos, for some reason it was changed to condos, the parking requirements would change to a 2 parking spaces per unit requirement. So if this was ever going to change for whatever reason, and Continental is very committed to making this a personal care home. It's not an easy thing to do, but they've made that commitment. You have a number of those through the areas, I understand, actually even out of the state.
Well, we have, we have more out of the state, but we are in the final stages of opening our first facility in Moon Township. This would be our second start at construction, and we are targeting 3 other locations. This is the business that we're in.
I'm not, and believe me, just to be clear, I'm not quibbling or suggesting or doubting your intent. I'm suggesting that at the end of 7 years, if this were to be sold to another group, do we have any protections to ensure that this will remain a senior facility? It sounds like no.
2 protections.
2.
One is this is considered commercial, it's part of the 50%. And I'm just talking about this piece here, it's part of that 50% requirement that we have. Okay. The second part is the parking requirements. So they would have to increase their parking requirements from, what is it? Is this the 0.75 or the 1.5? You remember, Mike? Or I keep mixing you guys up.
Yeah, it's 0.5, I think, and then we have actually more to account for the employees.
So they'd have to go to 1.5 times more parking than what they have here now for this.
And that would be approved by any future council?
Yes, that has to come back through council. We can't just change things like that.
Do they have the physical area to do that, should that eventuality occur?
They'd have to make they'd probably have to do a garage of some sort, depends what they end up building here.
So the answer to
It's
Bill's...
not gonna be an easy, go ahead.
Bill, I think the answer to Bill's question, if I'm hearing what you guys are saying, is no, there's not a guarantee, but it would be difficult for them to transition to something else.
Exactly. I should have said that.
Then regarding the duplexes.
Yes.
How would that?
Cottages.
Cottages, thank you.
Same situation, except these are 1.5. Since this is independent, these are 1.5 to 1. So they would have to gain a half a parking space per unit somewhere. So no, but this space, these other spaces could become residential by the uses that are permitted within the zoning district. These could be any use. These could be any use within the plan.
So
But we're gonna approve each one of these individually anyway, so whatever comes in, we're going to be approving them.
Bruce,
I'm sure you can appreciate my questions, given
Absolutely.
the parking issues we've experienced at cul-de-sacs that we were told that, would never be overdeveloped for parking, and now we have major problems. And so I'm concerned that we're doing this, all here talking about this is great for a senior facility, but we maybe don't have specific protections to ensure that happens. And we're looking in terms of 2, 3, 5 years, and we're making decisions here that are going to impact the town. We just finished a comprehensive plan for 10 years and beyond. So I just, I raised the question for the council to just
well,
consider.
does council have any, you heard what I said, it was like sort of summarized
Yes.
it. And I think that's accurate, you indicated it was. So that it's sort of, we're hoping that difficulty that's imposed by the nature of the design of the location would make it difficult for a developer to change it, but they could.
Yes.
And is there anything we could do to really lock in the issue that Bill's talking about?
Well, we had if that was a concern, we had an opportunity to change it when we changed the ordinance. We chose to leave it residential because residential has always been a potential component of anything that develops in this district.
What is the real concern? I mean,
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah.
What would it matter if, I mean, other than the 24 homes or 26 homes, we know that the big facility is not going to change. And if it did, it would completely change, so all of the elder residents would be
It would
out.
simply potentially change the impact on traffic, on congestion, on all the things associated with having more densely lived-in areas. That's all I'm saying. I know that the people in Ross were very unhappy when those buildings switched from senior to open housing. And so I'm asking a question because of something. I never asked a question before because I never even assumed it could ever be changed. The way this was sold to us as senior development, I just assumed that there was some protection in there that would assure that. And when I saw what happened in Ross, I realized that there was
I'll have to
the
look that up. I
potential,
haven't
and
seen that.
I'm raising it for all of your awareness, just
Yeah,
as
I'm
it
just-
became aware to me.
yeah.
I don't
That's
know
a
if
good
it's good or
point.
bad. Yes, sir.
One other point to consider is that if the town was approached to convert, say, the assisted living facility into regular apartments or something
Or
like
some
that,
other commercial use.
it would require an updated traffic study, where they would have to mitigate any improvement or any impacts. So it wouldn't just be a matter of parking or, what else did you say there, Bruce? Any other infrastructure, stormwater might be an impact. So I think that there would be a traffic impact, there would have to be a traffic study. So there's a number of elements that this council would have to consider down the road, should somebody come back and say that they would like to make that conversion.
I appreciate that. I just
no,
know that
that's-
when there was a big box considered there, all of those same requirements were there, and the community didn't feel like they were adequately protected. I just want to make sure that we go forward with this with open eyes, and I don't want the question to be raised for the first time the night we're voting on this. Okay.
It's a great comment, and we should do that, for every plan that we approve. We have to consider potential future uses.
Thank you.
For example, when we looked at Lowe's, we passed an ordinance that would allow that Lowe's to be divided up into pieces, so we don't have a large vacant building sitting there. So that's a great question, and there are things that we have in place, as Bill McKim pointed out, none of it's a guarantee. Density, for example, would allow it to happen. It's 15 acres, or 15 units per acre, so that would allow it to happen. But I think parking and the 50% rule are the two biggest things.
Okay, well, thank you.
And the cottages would be just two together, right?
Yes.
Not all a big row of them.
Well, there's 13 of them,
right.
but they're
I,
all
I
two
understand that, but they're not all gonna be connected. It'll be two
That's
and
correct.
two and two,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's it for the subdivision. Do you want to go through your presentation?
Sure.
I'll hit the buttons when you tell me to.
I think we're all familiar with the site, but if there's any questions, be glad to. Oh, I got control?
That'll just work the pointer.
Oh, all right. We can go on to, we can probably go through it at a pretty good pace.
Okay. It's not gonna work that way.
That
Sorry.
was a page I wanted to see, Bruce.
That one?
Yeah.
It is a page, I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know what's happened to it.
I do have hard copies if anyone wants a hard copy.
Seems like your
Yeah, I'll
pages
take
are all
a hard
blank
copy.
here.
Not a lot of substance here, Mike.
Oh, we got the one page.
Thank you, Tina.
So much for plans.
Yeah, we'll take the hard copies.
We'll take
Yeah, we'll take the hard copies.
You know what, I could use your, for most of it, I could use your old one.
All right, yes, that would be good.
Maybe not.
That's all it is.
Yeah, here we go. Oh, here we go, wait a minute, here we go.
Is this one?
I don't know why it wasn't coming up blank, I clicked on, I copied it, and it's working.
Okay.
Well, just,
I copied it, so now you're good.
You can take notes if you need to.
There you go, look at that, man, you are good. I don't know why it worked when I copied it,
Prepared, very
but
good.
it's doing it.
we've had technical difficulties before.
It's not during construction, right? Nothing ever comes up during construction. So there's some photographs of the site. There's two abandoned buildings that are they're coming down as part of our project. The property slopes towards Pine Creek. There's some wetlands in between the two existing buildings. There are two curb cuts that we are maintaining with adequate site distances. The master plan, which we've talked about in the three as part of the subdivision. I did want to, again, just to kind of, the point here is that the subdivision plan is very much like the October 2018 sketch plan with the retail on the north side, the 13 cottage homes, the personal care home, and the flex parcel. Some other elements you may recall are the town green, which is maintained, the walking trail along Pine Creek, which is maintained. So I think you'll find it very consistent with what we had presented at the very beginning of this project. Data security. I just thing on all day, so that didn't happen. Do you want to point out the walking trail now, or do you want to do it during the site? It's illustrated, maybe better seen here. So the walking trail, which what we're referring to as the walking trail, is more of a crushed limestone trail along the creek. Access to it from Blazier Drive would be through concrete sidewalks. The detention basin is on the backside here. It's a wooded area. It's a detention basin. If you go to the next slide, Bruce, one of the comments that came out of the Planning Commission was to add a fence between this cottage home and the detention basin. So we've complied with that, with the revised drawings. Also along the trail, there's a bioretention area for stormwater quality, and we've added a fence there as well. So in areas where people are close to the ponds, we've added fences at the request of the Planning Commission. The sidewalk, again, access to this walking trail would come off of Blazier Drive in front of these three cottage homes. There's sort of an auxiliary parking down there that, if the public wanted to drive down to the trail and spend some time on Pine Creek, understandable.
You also have a sidewalk along Blazier too.
Yeah, so one of the comments made, again, from the Planning Commission was to show on the plans the sidewalk along Blazier Drive. One of the requests that we have made, and we could talk about that later, was if, in lieu of a sidewalk along Blazier Drive, is that we utilize the sidewalk system and extend it out to Blazier Drive, so that instead of along Blazier Drive, folks are walking through the project from one side to the other. We respectably made that request. We understand, though, that this is what your ordinance requires, so that would require council's approval.
If you would do that, would you be willing to consider maybe not necessarily a sidewalk up there, but 2 feet or 3 feet of additional paving on Blazier, just for the people who are riding their bikes through, so you don't have, I hate to see a bicycle crew, sometimes they get groups of 20 bicyclists driving through the middle of an old folks home.
Yeah, we would consider that. Let us wrap our heads around what that would entail and get back to Bruce. I hadn't thought about it.
It's still within the right of way, so we wouldn't need additional right of way.
Okay.
Councilman Moritz, I'll share with you, in talking to residents adjacent to McCandless Crossings, they did a similar thing by, actually, it was required because of a pipeline where the sidewalk was to be placed on Cumberland.
Yep.
They were extremely disappointed that we did not provide that sidewalk along Cumberland and felt very, it was very awkward. They feel very awkward for their use of it to get to bus stops and other things up
Right.
there. I just want to share that.
But that
It
was
is
impossible
to-
because of the utility, right?
Because the
Yeah,
pipeline.
It was
Buckeye.
impossible,
Buckeye.
but nonetheless,
Buckeye.
it was a similar type of
Yeah.
It's
scenario.
exactly
and
the
I
same,
just-
exactly the same thing.
Yes, sir, it is.
It's
And-
like a detour.
Yep.
But there's nothing that inherently prohibits that being done in this case, right?
No, there's nothing that prohibits
Right.
from putting it along Glacier. Okay.
I can just picture a little old lady walking her chihuahua and all of a sudden 18 bikes drive through and
Just,
spin her around like in some sort of Chevy Chase movie.
Well, the Chihuahua, we do offer the extension through the cottage homes and personal care home and retail shops. And perfect spot, and hopefully she settles in either by the trail or the creek or the coffee shop. You wanna go to the next one, Bruce? So this is a rendering of what this application involves. So again, like we had mentioned earlier, development of the retail component will be part of a separate application. Development of the flex parcel will be part of a separate application. Again, this is primarily Lot 2, which, as you can see, includes the roadway and sidewalk infrastructures. If we opened up CEC's plans, you would see it includes the utility infrastructure for the project with taps readily available for future development. And it includes the senior housing component, the 13 cottage homes, the personal care home. So this was just, we put this in there so that you understand the difference between the master plan, subdivision plan, and what our application is all about. So this would, you know, with town council's approval and a grading permit and all the signed development agreement, we could begin constructing that. And again, this would include the town green and the trail as part of the infrastructure development.
So, Mike, do you wanna elaborate on the duplexes, how many duplexes there are?
So-
And, point to the locations and then elaborate on the personal care itself.
Yeah, so there are a total of 13 duplex units, houses, cottage homes, 6 here, 3 here, and the other 4 there. 3-story personal care home. And as we go through the presentation, there's more information about the building. So we're kind of starting with the site work, leading up to the, and then leading up to the buildings.
may I ask, you did show the sidewalk along Glacier on the previous, but that's not part of this site work.
It's not shown on this. This
That-
was a correction that came out of the planning commission meeting, so CEC revised drawings. There were not only just comments from the planning commission, but there were also comments from GAI, PDI, and Trans Associates. All of those have been addressed. As far as we know, there's no more comments, but there may be. I mean,
We
there's
have-
nothing.
Jerry's working on some, minor details on stormwater.
Okay, so
I see, so that will be added to this.
it's already
It's already on,
Oh.
we have the updated plans.
Thank you.
A little more focused on the personal care home, and just illustrating not just that it's the building, but it also has outdoor amenities associated with it. Socialization is very important for the senior housing, and you know, hopefully you find these amenities very attractive and understandable. But if you have any questions, some illustrations. But you know, it's important for us to provide areas of socialization. The town green, again, this was a focal point of conversation when we did a sketch plan. It's really a green area that provides for many types of events, including community events. So it's not solely restricted to the senior housing. Again, socialization is very important to us.
Was there any thought, or has there been parking allocated in some way for that to be a public venue? One of the issues we have, again, with McCandless Crossings, we have a town square there, and typically on a busy night, you can't park there to get there to enjoy it. Is there some way to, or thought to how people would get here public? I assume this will be open to the public, this green, or is this
Yes.
private property that would be
Well,
for
it
residents
is
and
private
family?
property, but again, there's nothing that prevents anyone from coming down. Just
Okay.
like utilizing the trail, utilizing the town green, coordinating efforts with the landowner for, a variety of it.
It would be used much like McCandless Crossing Town Green is, where they, even though it's private property, they do have community events. Bill, have to disagree with you. There is plenty of parking at McCandless Crossing. I have counted parking spaces, and there has never been a day when there wasn't adequate parking there, except on one Christmas Eve when they had, or Christmas weekend, I should say, where they had the grand opening of the Star Wars event. Parking was everywhere.
Okay, so this would be similar to that situation?
I don't think they'll have quite as much as McCandless Crossing, because McCandless Crossing has the theater, which has, I think, 500 spaces, and Dick's, which has quite a few spaces. Maybe that people have to walk across the street, but we provided for that. And we're providing for walking within this plan too. I say we, I'm not doing it.
Walking across the street, you mean Lowe's, go over to Lowe's?
No, walking across the street, Covenant and
Oh, okay.
Providence. So
Thank
it
you.
won't be, but we do have.
There are plenty of parking spaces.
We do have all the parking spaces
Adjoining.
planned.
Just hope they
Well,
don't
they're
do the
not on
yellow
this plan,
wallpaper.
But up in here, there's
Did you
a
see
lot
that?
of parking planned.
I wasn't paying
That's
attention.
really,
So,
as you see the full building.
Oh, back here.
Thank you. Great.
Well, you're asking some good questions.
I like that. I like that.
It really, at this point, these are illustrations of the buildings. So this is a rendering of the personal care home. I hope you find it attractive. You want to just kind of roll through these?
I can't remember what you have in these.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
these are the cottage homes. This is a rendering of the cottage homes that we're proposing.
There were two different styles of cottage homes. One has the front porches, which promotes socialization with people walking on the sidewalk. The other one are side entrance units. That's this unit here. And there is a porch on these also.
Not a covered porch.
Not a covered porch. It's more of a, I said porch. It's more of a
so an
patio.
entry, yes.
So there is some, it's not a monotonous grouping of buildings.
These are photos of other personal care homes that we've developed that illustrate some of the social areas within the buildings. Just again, to give you a sense of the quality of
It doesn't go by
product.
page. So I was trying, it still rolls. It's not a PowerPoint.
What about clicking on that very bottom arrow?
It'll still scroll.
All right.
And you can scroll through again, these are photos
Yeah, if I'm going too fast.
Oh, look, that carpet matches the drape or the wallpaper and the hair salon.
we like an attractive.
There you go.
There you, you picked up on that.
These are cottage home interior photographs. And this is the personal care home, the floor plan. The tan, the beige, the tan colored areas represent some of those socialization areas, the dining room, the bistro, the bar, lounges. Memory care units are reflected in the blue color on the right side. The assisted living residences are reflected in the green color. So this is the first floor. So within the middle are are sort of the common areas. As we go to the second and third floor, you'll see there are mostly residents, but there are lounge areas, areas of socialization on the second and third floor as well.
May I ask you, the very first time you came and brought the plan to us, which was in the spring, whatever that was. But anyway, one of the comments was that the building where you're saying is the common area, the tan. I thought they made the comment that that would be able to be used by other citizens other than just the people in that personal care home, or is it just going to be for those people?
It was, so our operational groups is the conversation with someone representing the operations side of it. And again, so there was, you're absolutely right. The conversation was about, bringing in small groups, obviously.
Right.
And again, socializing
Which I kinda
with
like
the
that
residents. Yes, so that would be run through the management and set up through there as part of the operation of the facility. That would be through the manager who would be hired. That person hasn't been hired today. But like at our facility in Moon Township, which is just opening, we do have a manager that would coordinate those events. So they will be reaching out to the community.
So would the town have to approach them, or would they come up with the idea?
I would hope that it's an open line of communication,
Okay.
so that there is a community, I mean, we're neighbors practically, so I would figure that that communication would remain open perpetually.
I just like the idea of other citizens in McCandless
Oh, yeah.
being permitted to, pull them into the whole development.
Yeah. And again, this is all part of, a desire to, bring people out of their residences into, and to socialize with others. That's an important function of these facilities.
Okay, thank you.
The cottage homes, floor plan, single car garage, elevations that were submitted as part of our application.
Is it, since there's single car garage, is there another spot if they had two cars?
So, yeah, well, typically that would be very unusual, but it's a driveway and a garage for parking, basically for someone who's there and a family that came to visit, for a visitor. But we've also included a couple of areas for some auxiliary parking, so, there's a couple of locations where outside of the cottages that people could park, visitors could park. But it would be very unusual to have. It's really a low volume of traffic.
Would these streets be adopted by the town at some point?
No, they will remain private.
Private, okay.
This is our Moon Township facility, again, just about to open. Just to give you a sense of colors and building materials. We had to sort of crop these photographs because there is ongoing construction. We wanted to eliminate construction vehicles and porta-johns and those types of things. But there are several photographs that we've included, again, to give you a sense. The landscape was still being finalized. But those are buildings, they're real buildings. They're up on Broadhead Road in Moon Township. If anyone wanted to run over and see what they look like, take a tour. But
That's the general overview of the plan. Jerry, you want to go through some of the, you guys want to hear some of the engineering aspects of it? Or is that just too boring stuff?
Yes.
We've got some great stormwater management going on here, and some reuse of the existing facility and cleaning it up. The lighting requirements that we have, that they're using the newest technology in lighting.
Well, they're all cut off there too.
Stormwater, they're, go ahead, Jerry, you talk.
Yeah.
I could do
So
the whole-
I'll give you
try
the
the whole
abridged version. Number one, I'm Jerry Klayowski with Civil and Environmental Consultants. So this project here, as you know, is the whole site is basically paved. So one of the requirements we had to meet was to establish at least 40% vegetated cover over the project site. So number one, you're reducing stormwater runoff right there. Number two, we are staying outside of Pine Creek. Our property line is on the upper bank of Pine Creek, so we're not doing any disturbance to Pine Creek. We're going to revitalize the existing stormwater pond that's there currently. We're going to upgrade what we call the outlet structure that controls the storm events. We are going to plant it, and with the fence, it'll make it a nice piece of a nice amenity for the project. The other thing we're doing, as Mike indicated, is there's a couple wetlands in here that we're avoiding, and we're actually going to incorporate those into the stormwater design by draining some of the roof water and pavement water into these areas to help keep them full of water. That's one of the requirements for DEP. If you cut off their source of water, their hydrology, they'll dry up and basically die. So we are going to keep that hydrology. What we've done is we've have a series of storm sewers within the project that all drain into this stormwater basin, and the stormwater basin utilizes a new concept that DEP came up with called a managed release concept. I'll get into that in a little bit. So we have this other bioretention area down here that does the exact same thing. So we're draining basically this portion of the project into this bioretention area. We're handling the volume difference between a 2-year storm, pre-developed and post-developed. And we're controlling that volume and releasing it slowly back into the storm sewer system that would go to this stormwater pond, be handled for rate control, and then discharged into Pine Creek. The managed release concept, to bore you the gory details, it's basically a glorified settling pond where the water's allowed to fill up. It soaks down into a stone layer, and by isolating that water in that stone layer, you remove the oxygen and all the nitrates from the water. When the next storm event comes along, it pushes down on that water and pushes it out of the stormwater pond. So you don't have all the nitrates and phosphates that you would typically have in stormwater runoff. They're all being captured now. So it gets pushed out as clean water, and then the cycle starts over again. So it just keeps on doing that. There's adequate volume in here. I was shocked myself when we did the original stormwater. We routed the entire paved area, pre-developed and post-developed, and there's still about 1.5 feet of freeboard in that pond. So even in a 100-year event with the outlet structure clogged up, not letting any other water out, we still have 1.5 feet worth of storage in there. So that's basically over-designed. Floodplain wise, since Pine Creek is a studied watershed and there are flooding issues, we've done a complete HEC-RAS analysis of Pine Creek. Our impacts have very, very little impact to Pine Creek, and actually we're turning it the other way, where we're actually reducing slightly the flood elevation of Pine Creek during those heavy rainfall events. So that's the stormwater for this project in a nutshell.
Just, they're helping us out a little bit. Presently, we have a drain somewhere in this area. Oh, there it is right there. Yeah, we have a drain which runs through the property and goes through here. I believe it's probably, I don't know if it was passed through originally or not.
I don't know.
But anyways, they're gonna continue to have that and redo the storm pipe through here and give us an easement through here, and grant us the easement to run it through this facility. So, we had a little bit of trouble with, not a lot of trouble, a little bit of trouble getting this proper slope coming this whole length because it's fairly flat through here. But Jerry was able to manage to get a good slope on the pipe.
Show us that pipe again. Where does that pipe go from where to where?
So there's a set of inlets here, and there's actually a head wall that collects. There's a sliver of water basically that comes way up, that comes down and drains into that pipe, and that pipe sort of comes into the project.
Beyond Blazer Drive?
Yes. Yeah,
Up the hill somewhere?
Correct.
Yes.
It takes all that drainage from that hillside.
Okay.
And
Where does it, excuse me, where does it begin? Where does it first pick up water?
At this point right here.
No, but I thought you said it was coming down a hill.
Yeah, it flows overland.
Oh, just coming off on the surface?
Yes, yes, surface runoff to that point.
Okay.
And in existing condition, there was a storm pipe that sort of zigzagged through
Real
the
quick,
project.
another question. Is the water that's gathering from the hillside formed in some fashion or forced into that
Yes.
pipe?
There's a head wall, what we call a head wall, has wings on it,
Yeah.
the pipe coming out of it, and it's typically sumped a couple feet below the ground. So as the water comes down the hill, it forces itself into that pipe.
But that occurs, what, right, comes across the road, or where's it?
It's under the road.
Under the road.
Yeah.
Where does it first meet the pipe then?
On the other
There's
side.
there's there's like a depression on this
Okay,
side.
it's on that side, I
Yeah,
got you, okay.
It's lower, and then it goes into that head wall, and then across the road and zigzags.
And then
through
down
the-
between the buildings to the
Well, in an existing condition, it zigzags, but what we're doing is we're picking up and we're bringing it along this roadway, and then it'll come up this way into the pond.
okay, thank you.
So because of knowing that piece of property, that it's flooded before, not that particular piece.
Right, this
But
one
there's
hasn't.
there's no danger of this flooding.
Absolutely not.
That's a good question, and it's important to point that out, that the 100-year flood, there's a little piece here, but it runs right along here as a 100-year flood. During Ivan, when this was Bally's, I was there the next day, it was not flooded. So I was able to use Bally's the very next day.
Where's the slope? Pardon me, Bruce. Where's the slope that comes?
Right here. There's about a 5-foot drop, 4 or 5 foot
Okay.
drop right along through here. There is a finger of floodplain that was added in a 2014 floodplain delineation by FEMA that comes in through here. So Jerry had to account for that finger of water.
Where's Trader Horns on that map?
Trader Horns over here.
And Bally's is right down.
Bally's was right here.
Okay. And none of that's in a floodplain, right?
None of that's in the 100-year floodplain. It is a 500-year floodplain, but not a, and I guess I should point out, we did get a letter from the county that was saying that we should account for the 500-year floodplain because of climate change and because of potential future development of the Port Authority site. My comment to that is, and I said this at the Planning Commission, and it was backed up by the CEC engineer, not Jerry, but Greg Quadcheck. They will have to follow the same regulations. If they develop within a 100-year flood, they are not permitted to increase the flow of water off their site and increase the floodplain elevation. We have a zero off-site requirement. So the comment that they might flood us out if they develop a Port Authority might flood this out is totally inaccurate. We're not going to let that happen. So I wanted to point that out in case we did mention that at the Planning Commission.
If you wouldn't mind showing me, how does the Port Authority parking, how's that connect?
It's all over here.
So that's not going to affect any of that developing, like all those cars sitting
No.
there?
No, they're actually off our property.
So if we were looking at it, it'd all be over here. Over this way.
Joanne, are you talking about the cars waiting for a bus?
Yes.
Or you're not talking about the ones that are around the Rave Cinema?
No.
And that,
Just the bus part, yes.
That's
Just the bus
That's
part.
another whole issue as far
right,
as
I
I'm
understand,
concerned.
just want to make sure we were.
Well, and they mentioned that, as I said, in the spring, when they initially talked about this, that, and Kevin Dougherty, I think, brought it up and said that they were trying to speak to someone about that Rave property. So I don't know if they continue to do that or if that's gone by the wayside.
What's happened with that is the development of that site is so convoluted that this group may still be interested in it, but it's not part of this plan because it will take, once we start planning for it, it will probably take at least 2 years to get it
The
through.
Rave property.
The Rave property and the Port Authority, if they do anything but park at the Port Authority, that also.
Thank you.
I just have a question about the stormwater detention facility and the rate of outflow there. I mean, you mentioned that it was designed with overcapacity. Obviously, that's because the site was entirely paved, and now we're not dealing with a paved site anymore, I presume. But has the rate of discharge been reduced to take pressure off of the, because it's the same pond, I assume, that the parking lot was using, am I right?
Right.
So the issue seems to be, capacity seems to be two factors, how much you can hold and how fast you can release it.
Well,
Can you explain how
Yeah,
that's
our
being managed?
the stormwater management ordinance is written in twofold. Number one, it addresses peak rate. So that's what you're typically seeing with these detention ponds, where you have a heavy storm event come in and you're holding that water and you're releasing it slowly. What DEP had discovered was, even though you are releasing it at a pre-developed rate, now you're releasing it for a longer duration and it's causing impacts to the stream. So the second part of the stormwater management ordinance is that volume control that I said that we were handling. The volume control, we're basically holding that in these facilities here and releasing that less volume as well. One point I'd like to bring up is this stormwater pond here, typically for development this size, you would see a discharge barrel of anything from 24 to 30 inches in diameter. We had discussions, since part of the embankment is in the floodway, we had discussion with DEP about a waiver from activity there if we wanted to replace that. And they said, that's fine, you can get a waiver, however, you need to replace in kind. The pipe coming out of here is only a 15-inch diameter pipe, so you're restricting your flow even more using that 15-inch pipe. So it's pretty much just a replication of the stormwater facility that was built for the overall development, but as you pointed out, we have all this pervious area now that's reducing the runoff completely, so sort of a multifaceted type.
Yeah, there are
review.
three components, and just to use a little different terminology than what Jerry used, there is the rate control, number one. That's how fast the water's discharged, that's what you're concerned about. The volume control, which holds it back, and how much you're holding back. And as Jerry pointed out, we are able to control the 100-year flood and still have 1.5 feet of freeboard. As he pointed out, and this is important, if this is floods here, the discharge of this water is going to be blocked because of that. It's inundated.
Bruce, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
All of those are controlled by the size of the pipe that's designed in the system, right?
Yes.
It's not like
mostly.
It's not like there's a spigot you're shutting off somewhere or anything like that.
It's controlled by pipe sizes and what mechanism you're using.
So we create an outlet structure. An outlet structure is usually a cement, it's like a type inlet, it's a type M inlet, just a concrete inlet, and we drill orifices in it or weirs. Depending on how much head builds up over top of them, it'll discharge a certain amount. So if you have to, let's say your post-developed storm is 20 CFS, cubic feet per second, your pre is 10, you have to reduce your post by 10. So we size that orifice to handle that, to reduce it down to the 10.
And in order to get the rate, it's usually, what's the word I want to use?
It's multi-stage.
Multi-stage, there we go.
Yeah, so you have an orifice, a weir, and then the top.
And an important part of it is a new part to it, since this one was done, is the water quality. So Jerry pointed out the new, absolutely, you might be the first one to use it in the canvas. The rate, where it forces the water at managed release. And we also have the bioretention here, which takes care of first flush water, which comes down through here, and we didn't have any of that before. So
It all goes to Pine Creek, right?
It all goes to Pine Creek.
Then North Park Lake eventually.
And we hope not the town hall.
Right.
Tennis courts. That's why I'm asking.
Yep.
Because- Okay.
Yeah, we are extremely careful about anything that happens upstream.
Okay.
It impacts us.
Now,
Yeah,
in the
and actually-
process of all this construction, will you be taking care of the road? Because we paved it this year just to a certain point, till we heard what you were gonna do there.
Blazer Road?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the construction company will have to bond the road for heavy
You will
trucks.
you'll pave the road.
The development agreement.
Okay. I said you'll pave the road,
Pave which road?
Laser?
Oh,
No, they won't be paving the
No
road.
bond it.
They'll bond it, which means they'll go out and take pictures of it.
Damage
They'll-
it will-
They'll put a bond and they'll fix anything that's damaged, yeah. Yeah, actually,
Try.
one of.
Didn't hurt to try.
Doesn't hurt.
Well, that was a good,
I tried.
One of
never
the-
hurts.
One of the reasons when we first came into the town, we were talking about disconnecting this off-site water and discharging it directly to Pine Creek in lieu of having it go through our development. But one of the things we found out was if you take all of this water and you just pop it into Pine Creek here, now you're creating an excess of water there without being controlled. So we felt it best just to bring it into our pond, control it, and then you don't have any issues with any other additional flooding.
Yeah, even this goes into the facility.
Right.
Okay, any more stormwater questions? Do you have a picture of the buffer? Showing the buffer?
Yeah, the landscaping.
Buffer here is pretty cool, the perimeter buffer.
It's actually, it's in that slideshow. The one that showed the yellow sidewalks, the fence.
Yeah, I saw that slide.
If
Near the beginning.
When these guys finish up, ask them if there's any questions from the public.
Yeah, sure. With the big.
So this is the landscape plan, which, a little further down now.
Oh, other way.
One more maybe?
Right there you go.
So this is reflective of the landscape buffer requirements at the perimeter of the property.
Yeah, so, what's now just the big green area is gonna have trees and shrubs planted along Blazer Drive. There's a buffer adjacent to the Port Authority, and there's some plantings around the facility, and a lot of plantings are gonna go on within the facility itself. It's pretty nice to be able to have all that. Right now, we just have the big open lawn, so it'll be nice to have some trees and some things to help break that up. Lighting is meeting the town lighting requirements. And it was studied by the fire marshal. The fire marshal said everything's cool with it. You can get the fire trucks in and out of there. And if I'm wrong, Dan, just say, no, I never saw it before. And our traffic engineer reviewed their traffic study and found it to be acceptable. There aren't any problems. There isn't a necessity for any traffic improvements at the intersections of Blazer Drive or at the intersection of Blazer Drive and Ingomar or Blazer Drive and McKnight. It's about all I can think of.
Is there any other questions by council? I'll open it up to the public so that they can, any questions by the public? Okay. Okay, very good.
I believe your 8 p.m. interviewing is
Yeah, we're gonna have, Sheets present their plan and then we'll,
Sheets?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
whatever. Okay, thanks, Tom.
He's here though.
Yeah, I know, but I just.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
certainly
Thanks.
welcome. I know what happened. My computer wasn't fast enough to pick this up, so when I copied it, it was already on there. So she did the right thing.
All right, I won't yell at you. Thank you. Okay, I guess number 4, Greg.
Yeah, review with recommendation to adopt a resolution for a sewage planning module for the previously approved Sheets development located at 131 Montclair, 8500 Perry Highway, 8510 Perry Highway, and 8518 Perry Highway. This was reviewed by McCandless Township Sanitary Authority in Elkison for adequate capacity.
So this was a requirement of any plan that's going through Elkison. We're required to do a full planning module. Mostly everybody else, for example, the plan we just went over, will just get more of what we call a postcard. We'll send it into DEP. They'll say, we already have adequate capacity. But if it goes to Elkison, we have to pass a resolution. In addition to it being reviewed by MTSA, it also has to be reviewed by Elcasan. So we have a review letter by Elcasan that says there is adequate capacity, and by MTSA, which says there is adequate capacity. Town council and the planning commission both reviewed the sheets development, and it was approved. So this is the formality that comes afterwards in an Elcasan project.
There's no indication that there's no changes to the plan whatsoever. This becomes a housekeeping matter that you'll see more and more of if there is development or redevelopment in the Elcasan watershed.
Any questions by anyone in council? Any questions by public? Okay, so we'll go back to the interviews we were conducting. There's one final applicant to interview, and I understand he's here right now.
We're gonna pick up at item 4, is that right?
Yeah, right.
After we do
Yeah, after we'll
Nicholas
do-
Mance.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, yeah.
We're taking a
Yeah,
diversion here.
right, yeah.
There we go.
Is Nick here? Okay, come on up. We find that stuff interesting.
I did actually.
Yeah.
I did actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Planning, stormwater, and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where am I
so
sitting here?
you can take that.
Okay, let me just, I'll give you the advantage of what I started. The Activity Advisory Committee is a newly established committee by resolution number 20 of 2019. Is a committee to help develop and promote new civic engagements and support existing civic engagements. It is to develop and schedule activities and/or programs for the town. Let me read from Exhibit A to the resolution number 20, item number 1. Initial and ongoing location, assemblage, and prioritizing of community resources, including facilities, personnel, and equipment for possible activities. Would you tell us something about yourself and why you would be interested in this committee?
Yeah, I actually just recently obtained my MPA, what's called Master's of Public Administration degree from the University of Pittsburgh. I believe that I have a long history and just sort of a personal interest in getting involved in civics and government going back several years. I believe that I have knowledge in the areas of public finance, planning, development, those areas, as well as just an interest in both kind of what the town here does and kind of some of the surrounding communities, just following some of the debates that have gone on with, I know, I'm not sure if it's really a hot button debate anymore, but this kind of whole debate as to whether to or not build some sort of a large public recreation facility. So, I believe that, I bring some knowledge to the table, and as well as some ability to, kind of synthesize knowledge and facts and everything to make decisions in those areas.
Okay, good, very good. Bill, did you have some
Yeah,
questions?
oh, sure, yeah, Mr. Mance, hey, congratulations on your MPA.
Oh, thank you very much.
Nice
yeah.
work.
Long road.
Yeah. Mr. Mance, have you read the resolution and associated Exhibit A forming this advisory committee?
I have, yeah. I think it just kind of popped up on the town website probably a couple days ago, but yeah.
Did you have any questions or any concerns with what you read?
I think primarily, like, it talks about, like, a written activity or event evaluation must be submitted to council within 2 weeks of the completion of all activities' final session. Is that something primarily that is done for the purposes of kind of at the completion of an event to determine kind of suitability for the next year? Or is there going to be, I don't know, I think of it as sort of like a formal like grant application process. Like the town will open up, have like an open forum for, anyone who wants to step up and plan an event or have anything any kind of an activity, we'll call it.
Yes, it's a.
And council just decides from there.
Yeah, it's actually forward-looking. It actually speaks to and focuses the members on the fact that they serve at the pleasure of the council.
Okay.
And that anything that's done is through the approval of the council.
Okay.
That's a good question, though.
Sure.
Did you have a chance to review the community activity section of the newly adopted implementable comprehensive plan that speaks to this creation of this committee?
Yeah, I believe that, yes, I think that's what I have.
Looked it
here.
over?
Yeah, kind
Yeah.
of, yeah, this is a
Okay.
correct document here, yeah.
Having that information in front of you, can you describe for us your sense of the time commitment that you believe that serving on this committee will require and that you're willing to make?
I almost kind of think about it in the same sense of, especially me just recently being in school, kind of the time that's used for meetings and kind of, times 3 on top. So say if you have like about an hour and a half, of time per week, we'll say that, times 3 is what, about like 4.5 hours on top of that. I think that the conundrum that I've found in the past with kind of, serving and being on committees and even, being chairing or co-chairing committees is that oftentimes the members think that, just attending the meeting or attending a bunch of meetings is kind of, doing work for the committee. I'd want to go to the meetings and, be as active as I can on top of that and try to, spend at least, a few hours here and there, really taking some dedicated time to do work for the committee. So.
Can you suggest some examples of your own experience and background, both professional and volunteer, that will serve you as well as this community in this position?
Sure. My role for kind of parts of the past 6 years has been with University of Pittsburgh. I'm essentially like academic administrator for the PhD programs and some of the other master's programs in bioengineering at Pitt. And you kind of mentioned a little bit about volunteers. One of the things that we run each year is essentially like a large recruitment event. Every time that we have like an open admission season, we take our kind of group of top applicants, we rank them and everything according to who are our best applicants according to GPAs and test scores and everything, and we have a large event each year in February hosting about 40 or so, and essentially it's sort of like a weekend long, like a kind of over 3-day event. Part of this is kind of from our current crop of students, kind of recruiting and getting volunteers in place to just help students find buildings, find rooms, setting up kind of some of the little events, meals, dinners that go on during all of this. So I think that I do have some experience in sort of handling and managing volunteers and such. And I think that with this committee, I think that a lot of the activities that people have planned will be very volunteer based, and some of the challenges that go along with that, I believe are it's as much as we love volunteers, oftentimes when you're not formally compensating someone, it can be a little bit challenging to hold them accountable and hold them kind of we'll say show them any sort of consequences for not being there, not showing up, not carrying out their due diligence. So I have a lot of times in which I've had to deal with that, tactfully.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And on top of that, I'm at Pitt. I'm involved in it's called staff council, which is sort of the university's version of governing structure for staff and kind of how we work with separate bodies that are formed by faculty, or kind of think about them as professors at Pitt, and students, and kind of faculty, staff, and students kind of working together to ultimately make recommendations to board of trustees and sometimes the state and everything else. So kind of understanding where the different stakeholders fit in, I think, is something I have some background in.
Mr. Mansell, one more question.
Yep.
In reviewing that material, in your own words, can you describe to us what your sense of the primary purpose of this advisory committee will be?
In addition to, just kind of doing kind of the, I don't know, sort of pragmatic, practical things of, helping facilitate activities throughout the town. I think helping us form and bond a little bit more of a sense of community. I think I saw something in here in terms of recommendations for how many activities should, be ran per year based on population. And I think that, McCandless's population, give or take, between 25 and 30,000, we're a little bit below what we should offer in terms of activities and just general recreation. I think that the role of this committee is, to offer things that provide meaningful enrichment and activities and recreation for hopefully things that are open to all town residents, and to just sort of provide a little bit more socialization, between groups, between residents, between neighborhoods and such. Not me, I think that right now, sometimes is a little bit kind of, cordoned off by neighborhoods. It's trying to get people to bring people together and just get them to, individuals, families, and others to just talk to each other and be friends, hopefully.
Thank you so much for seeing the forest through the trees.
Great.
And looking beyond the activities to recognize that the goal of this council is to enhance and encourage civic engagement and community engagement and socialization. Thank you for those answers. I have no further questions.
Nick, I'm very impressed with all of the activities that you've been involved in.
Thanks.
Congratulations, good job. If you were chosen for this committee, would you come to this committee with some ideas of things that could be done, and would you be willing to go out and look for places that the activities could take place?
Yes, there aren't any really that are coming off of me from the top of our head. I know that, just earlier tonight here, you all were talking about some of the challenges associated, say, with like McCandless Crossing and, kind of holding public activities in private spaces, if you will. I think that, having festivals and things that have, fireworks and the whole shebang, in addition to what we do each year for Community Day, is something that, we can do perhaps on a smaller scale throughout the year. Or, I was pretty impressed. I think that it was last year. What was it? I think whatever hurricane came through in early September last year sort of wiped out Activity Day, and people came together and still had, I think it was called a McAutumn Fest. Maybe we can have one of those, once per season, or have, kind of more activities that revolve around holidays. Memorial Day, Labor Day, have some sort of a maybe like a Christmas parade or something of that nature. I think that, you see a lot of people, who sort of go off and do their own thing. I know that, some like the fire departments and such have, fire trucks that roll around throughout December and, have Santa Claus on top of, throw candy canes out to kids. But let's have, kind of like a more town-wide, town-wide coordination, and kind of build those things out a little bit. Especially those that do take place in, on streets and parks, kind of in more kind of public realms. In terms of where, there's the obvious places, in the schools and North Park, what have you. I'd kind of be more interested in, it's been a while since I've looked at like a real kind of full map of McCandless and, how things are zoned and where we really do have, suitable public areas to hold events and activities and such. So, but that's certainly something that I'd, pull together the resources and ask, our planning director, Mr. Betty, and, kind of try to, I think that it's oftentimes important, especially with activities and events, to, make sure and double check and triple check that you're not breaking any of the rules, not violating any laws, not, holding things in places that, we'll say people may take offense to or may otherwise, create any sort of a public disturbance. So I think it's important to do that.
Thank you.
People can take offense very easily.
They can, and you have to work with that, so.
I've been sitting here thinking, can you even have a Christmas parade today? Can you have a Santa Claus? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the firemen do that, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's not
It's a
offensive.
holiday parade.
Yeah, holiday
Yes.
parade.
There you go, problem
Sparkle.
solved. I just don't know where.
Sparkle season, throw snowballs.
Sparkle
out.
parade.
Nick, I listened carefully to what you said, and of course, I know you apart from this meeting, so I'm not going to burden you with any any more questions.
Bill asked enough anyhow.
You can.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McKim.
I don't have any questions either.
No.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Okay. Thank you very much.
When did you get
Thanks again for having me in.
Nick, when did you actually get your degree award?
It was last December, actually,
Last
2018.
December,
Thank you very much. Mr. Robbins, thank you very much.
You need to fill that time space.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you very
Nice
much.
to see you again.
Good seeing you. Good seeing you.
Okay, we'll go back to the zoning committee meeting. We have one more item on the agenda. That's the further discussion pertaining to the proposed zoning amendment regarding the keeping of chickens, ducks, and bees in residential zoning districts and adding associated definitions. Let me just go over this. Let me point out, I don't know if you looked at section 1341.031. It seems to me that it could be interpreted to allow council to approve as a conditional use small farm animals without meeting the 5-acre requirement. Therefore, at the minimum, I think you would want to eliminate, Gavin, is 1341.031D. It currently reads, I mean, you can take a look at this on your own, but at your own leisure. But it seems to me it'd be broad enough to allow 1341.031D.
I mean, I think the idea was, and I'm familiar with this section.
Oh, okay.
And I know that we are going to have to modify this if council decides to move forward with these sort of expanded regulations regarding, keeping of bees, keeping
Right.
of ducks, and keeping of chickens.
Right.
And because there will be some inconsistencies the way this is currently set up.
Yeah, okay.
And so, I guess, just from an initial review of what we have on the books now versus what the template ordinance that Bob's sort of circulated for council to look at as an example.
Mhm.
If council is looking to move forward, I think that way is probably the way to go, is to adopt something similar to that template and then go back through and we'll take a look at this small
Yeah.
animal ordinance and just sort of modify that as necessary to kind of make it all work together.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just want to point that out.
I appreciate that. Can I hang on to your note here?
Yeah, you can have it. Then, let's just go through the ordinance itself. The ordinance, everyone has a copy of the ordinance?
Yes.
The ordinance, North Fayette's ordinance. In the first paragraph, in the third line, it talks about in residential zoning, and really it seems like in R1 and R2 zoning districts, because everything else becomes mobile housing, and really should be limited to R1 and R2 zone districts. And then it adds in these. Pardon me.
I'm sorry, so single-family housing is
Yeah,
what we're
it's
talking
single family and two family,
Standalone.
R1 district and R2. And
Gotcha.
yeah.
Essentially, the folks who would have their own private
Right,
yards
yeah,
to-
exactly.
to allow this to happen.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
Then as the second whereas clause has definitions, they would add, going through these definitions, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe you would want to add Africanized honeybees. I mean, I'm just going off my notes. An apiary. Apiary. Okay, apiary. My translator. I don't think we need a definition for bee or beekeeper or chickens or chicken coop or colony. We may need a definition for a flyaway barrier. Do you have?
We
okay.
need that, or we know it?
I think we need it.
Mhm.
That's something that not everybody's aware of.
And running at large, it's in here, it's in the ordinance, that running at large is, okay. And then, let me see. I think that's about all I have on the first page.
Chairman Wiskowski,
Yeah.
you thought of the chicken coop, being that's a structure, shouldn't there be some type of, if we're considering this, some type of definition to, just as we have a definition for a single-family home or a duplex? I mean, it's a structure that someone, I believe, would need to construct or have constructed on their property.
I'll leave that to Bruce and
I'm just
Gavin, yeah?
Yeah.
Or maybe,
It might be because of that. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree with you on the other comments.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Bill, that could be a substantial structure.
Well, we already have a code that says they can't build anything over 100 feet. So it can't be substantial, it can be 10 by 10.
They can't do what?
100 square feet?
Build something over 100 square feet.
So it would be.
So it can't be substantial,
No.
it's,
And just so everyone realizes, the template in your packets, I think, is missing section 4, which has all the definitions in it.
I see.
So
Yeah, it
I
was.
printed out my, my
Okay.
document Bob had sent me, so that might sort of bring all this, at least that particular issue together. Chicken coop, for example, is just defined as a structure to house chickens, must be properly ventilated, heated, and protected from weather, vermin, and predators. So, I don't think you lose a lot by having these definitions in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
If anything, it just sort of adds a little clarity and maybe it almost adds some additional requirements beyond, hey, this is, having someone just say, hey, that's a chicken coop, and then have it not really.
It's a box.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So I don't think there's much harm in it unless you.
No,
think,
I was just going, I didn't realize you had the definitions.
Yeah, they're already done, it's just the missing section
Oh, okay.
4
Okay.
from your
Okay, good
packets.
enough. Okay, those were my comments on page 1. My comments on page 2 are, I think the second paragraph, again, is the R1 and R2 zoned districts.
What
In
are
the
you talking about? Our pages
Page
aren't
2,
numbered.
page 2.
I don't have the number.
That bold paragraph, is that what you want?
Yeah, the
Section
section
1?
yeah.
You're talking about section 1?
We're in section 1. yes.
Section 1 amendments.
so amend part 4 of the township zoning ordinance supplemental regulations to add new, is that where we're at?
Yeah, right, amend,
Add new regulations.
and put,
We'll make a note anywhere that it says residential zoning
Okay.
district, we'll just change that to R1 and R2, I think that makes sense.
yeah, okay, good. And then, actually, this will bring up some controversy because I'm not really, but let's hold this off. 2A, the maximum number of chickens, and then let's just get, and the outside run shall be attached to the coop. I think 10 feet's too close, I mean, to a lot line. That's 3 paces.
I actually did think, I was surprised it was less than 15 feet when I first saw it.
Yeah. But let me,
It was in keeping with accessory structures, like sheds and things like that.
I was just gonna
In
say
this
that,
ordinance.
so we could do, right now, we're 10 and 15, if you're R1, it's 15, if you're R2, it's 10. So
Yeah,
we
but-
could keep with that.
well,
Or do you want it
why don't we have 20 feet? Because that's,
Make it
going
bigger?
20 feet is, really, you're just almost on top of
Okay.
the other people.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask a question. How will these distances affect our agricultural zoning, which requires, I
It
believe,
won't.
175 feet from the nearest lot line for
I
any
don't
structure?
think this has
You
effect.
can't do this
Well,
for,
No, my point is though, will that allow agricultural buildings now to be built for chickens within 10 feet of the property?
No, this is
We're only
purely
R1
recreation.
too.
This is purely personal use.
What Bill's, yeah, but what Bill's
R1
saying,
and R2.
I think we gotta look at that whole
Well,
thing.
Okay.
Well, farm isn't an R1.
Okay.
I see. You're right, by exclusion, by the exclusionary R1, R2, it takes agricultural out of
Right.
the.
Well, wait a second,
Yeah.
farm, we better take a closer
Yeah.
look at that, because a
I just
farm
wanna be
is in
careful.
an R1 or R2.
Oh.
We don't have an ag, we don't have an ag district in McCandless, we have R1 and R2.
Oh.
We are single farm, but what we have done is define farm and allow it anywhere, but you have to meet all those criteria. But your point's a good one, Bill, because we do have great big setbacks on the.
Yeah,
For
but
good
again,
reason,
these
I
are,
believe.
this is for
Yeah.
personal use as opposed to
So I think
commerce.
Yeah,
separately,
good point.
separately, we should look at that.
Mhm.
Because our horse requirements are
Well,
tough also.
Well, then let's take a look at
Yes.
2A.
So, two,
The
first
number of
4,000.
chickens, the
Uh-huh.
maximum number of chickens, what do we want to do with that? I just don't see 10 chickens initially, because if we get someone with 10 chickens and there's
10
a lot of
chickens is
complaints.
not that
I know,
much.
I know it's not that much, but right now they don't have any. And we're giving them, I would say, maybe a maximum number of 5.
That's I mean, people who actually eat the eggs every day, if they've got a family of 4 that even eats 2 every day, they'd need 8. If they've got
Yeah,
a
but-
family of 5 or 7,
But once you set a number, then we're in a non-conforming use situation if we try to change
they've already
it.
set a number of 10, which
Well,
is
we had-
already
we-
very low.
Well, we were having that big controversy up at Park Edge about number of pets, and
We were having a big controversy. We have 6 people who hate these animals, and they complain all
There's a
about
big
it.
controversy.
Bob, do you recall if it was sort of an industry standard, is that North Fayette set it at 10, or sort of was there any reason for that? Do you think?
I think they looked at it, they spent about 2 years looking through this ordinance, so they took a great deal of care. It was based in large part on what other communities had done, where there were averages, in looking at overall lot size, but they felt that 10 seemed to be a
Sort of a
fair
sweet
limit.
spot there.
Yeah.
10 certainly seems, I would accept
I think
10.
I think sweet would be 5.
Yeah, but we already know that you're already against almost everything that
Oh,
could
yeah, yeah,
bother
yeah,
anybody.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
unfair to say.
It's not unfair to say.
Yes, it
It's
is.
something that happens on every single occasion. Somebody wants to do anything. If they want to grow marijuana, or if they want to, it's keep it away from everybody. If they want, I mean, it's
Can we
constant.
deliberate here honestly and not have personal attacks against each other? This is
It's not a personal attack.
Sure it is. When you say somebody's against everything, that's not right to say that, Steve.
Okay, well, then find something that he's not.
Okay, I'm not
working with
against
you on this-
chickens, but I'm against
ordinance.
maybe having more than 5.
Why don't we leave that as a highlighted item for right now for further
Yeah,
discussions? I think that-
highlight,
that work?
yeah.
I have
That's
So
fair.
maybe the numbers between 5 and 10 somewhere.
I have an ACCD publication, Urban Agriculture, they recommend 8 for lots smaller than 20,000 square feet and up to 12 on lots 20 to 40,000 square feet.
Yeah, but once you set one to high, you can't go back. I mean,
I got you. I'm just
know,
saying what they have.
I'm just saying
I got
that
you.
you can always go up, you can't go back,
Got it.
and that's what I'm looking at.
So forget the recommendations of the experts. Let's go with the feelings of the people who don't know what they're doing at
Well, if
all.
we say 8, that's between the 5 and 10, so does that satisfy?
8 is
It's on the
for
low end of the
20,000,
guidelines. So-
right? And 40,000 is only an acre. So we're saying we're recommending that our average or our maximum is pretty much the lowest for almost everybody else.
Well, again, until we get some experience with this ordinance, I would suggest go with lower numbers.
Well, 8 is about the lowest number.
Oh, there's numbers lower than 8. I think 1.
Well, yeah, you can make up any number you want, but as far as the recommended numbers,
How about if we use 8 for a placeholder, is that fair for right now? And then certainly it's subject to modification as we.
No, I'd rather use whole 5 as a placeholder.
Okay, with the question mark.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, almost the entire town was for these chicken things. And almost the entire town is against, almost everyone who has responded to any questions has been for these chicken
Where was the
things.
survey taken?
The survey was taken on the open discussion page, which is the biggest page that people are actually allowed
Well, how
to
many
discuss on.
people responded to this?
I want to say there were like 160 people.
There's 20,000 people in the.
That's, yeah, but you see all the time, constantly you see a survey of 10,000 people were taken across the United States. Well, that's a much lower percentage than 180 out of 28,000 when you talk about, so that's actually a fairly.
What is $10,000? 10,000 people across the United States. What's this got to do with anything?
It's a very common percentage of a population that is taken as poll numbers regularly. I see the number pop up regularly.
Well, can you show me?
I could if I went through all this, if you want to sit here for a half hour
How
watching
about
it
for
all
now, we
up.
just put 5 to 10 and just highlight it
Okay,
and just leave
5
it,
to 10.
leave it. Just so we can kind of keep things rolling.
5 to 10, yeah.
Yeah, 5 to 10.
I'll just highlight it, and then, you know, one of those, there, eventually, a majority of you will settle on a number, and that will be the number.
Okay.
Very diplomatic, good job.
What do we said under C, 20 feet, chicken coop, 20 feet?
20 feet from lot lines?
Yeah. A D, 20 feet. F, last word is 20 feet, last sentence is 20 feet.
Chicken waste, 20 feet from lot line as well?
Yeah, is that good enough? I mean, that's, I don't know.
What did you just
2F,
say?
he wants to change 10 feet to 20 feet.
I want to change, yeah, to
Storage of chicken waste, Bill.
yeah. And,
Chicken waste, you're very polite.
yeah. And two,
I'm just reading the document.
That's what it says.
Waste collection can be within 10 feet of a lot line? I mean,
well,
this is
we just changed this to 20.
20
Well,
feet.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe a higher number.
I'm just,
How big a pile
Think
of
about-
chicken waste can,
Can 5 chickens make?
Why not?
Probably like this,
how long can it accumulate? I don't know, I can, you know.
except for it dissolves every
you have to
couple
clean it-
days or
Clean it
weeks.
up, I don't know, I've never raised chickens, I don't know.
Yeah, and 2I on the next page, I would take out because we're putting in R1 and R2s, which aren't, do not cover.
Delete.
Yeah, delete.
2I is
Is
not
there a
on the next
reason-
page.
Bruce, is there a reason we might want to leave that in there for, as a
Just for
result of
pre-
some pre-existing
Yeah,
non-conformity
yeah,
or something?
I was thinking the same thing.
No?
Well, it doesn't hurt to have it in there,
Are we talking about
there's no downside to it.
Mobile home parks.
Yeah, right, Bill.
Prohibition.
chickens?
No mobile home parks or townhouses?
We don't have any chickens that I know of there.
No, I'm talking about townhouse communities, apartment communities, or mobile
Wait,
home parks
do-
in R1 and R2 districts.
Well, what do we do with G?
Why wouldn't they?
Oh,
What do
no,
we do with
do
G and
not.
H?
No, they're all in their own districts. Mobile home parks could be in a R1 or R2 zone district, but we don't have any.
Greg, what was
Do you
the,
want to keep them out of mobile home parks?
Well, is a mobile home park in an R1 or R2?
what happened to G and H?
Should potentially
May
be.
I have an answer to that question?
Wait, a second.
We
Well,
didn't
we-
get there
we-
yet, we didn't get there yet.
Well, he's over on the next, he is, he's
Yeah.
on I.
G and H where there was nothing changed.
Yeah, nothing
Okay,
changed.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
asking for.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get an answer to the
Can't
question.
kill your
That's all.
chicken.
Okay, so Gavin's question is, just in case we develop a mobile home park, should we keep chickens in a mobile home park?
No.
You wouldn't develop it in an R1 or R2, would you?
Yeah.
We probably would have to,
Would have
yes,
a lot of,
because that's. the
Wouldn't
only-
that be,
I don't know where. but-
since it's nobody owns the property,
People
it'd be, it wouldn't even be up to them anyhow.
Yeah, that's
live
true,
in
you got a point
other
there.
homes, or probably like to raise
Well, the
chickens.
owner, isn't there an owner, the overall owner of the?
The overall owner is not
Could
gonna.
they have like a community,
Theoretically have a
a
community chicken
community
yard.
chicken coop?
Chicken coop. I mean,
Okay, well, leave it in there.
All right, I'll leave it in.
Leave it in.
As simple as, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't see a problem with
There's no reason not to leave it in unless you want to encourage mobile bars to have chicken coops.
Okay.
So, I think we're okay with
Just
that.
leave it in.
Onward to ducks.
Sounds like discrimination.
Ducks is same R1 and R2, but one, I probably, one I have, subject to standards in this section, it shall be lawful to maintain ducks as an accessory use by permit only, I use the word only in R1 and R2 districts. I think I put only in the chickens. It's under section 1, the third paragraph. Keeping of chickens shall be allowed by right as an accessory use by permit in only in an R1 and R2 district.
I circled that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm clear down to F, 2F. No, third line, no melodious, should that say with no melodious?
Malodorous?
Malodorous?
Malodorous.
malodorous to the smell, but
Well, why does it have no, creating no malodorous?
Bad smelling
No bad
smells.
smell.
Creating, well, when creating malodorous, is no redundant? That's my, it's done.
He's
in
on
F.
two F.
Yeah, without is probably, it's creating a grammar problem.
Yeah.
Without creating no, doesn't work.
So-
So take the no out.
Take the no out.
No out.
No.
Yeah, no. Okay. And
We gotta stick with 20 feet for
It's like,
Yeah,
it's like
20
third line up at the end.
20 feet.
Are we, did we skip over the 1 acre or larger?
Yes. Do you have a comment on that one?
So now we're reducing this even to 1 acre lots or keeping this
This
at
is
1
for
acre?
ducks, for ducks.
You're-
I don't know,
Ducks
I don't know
are
anything about that.
quieter than chickens.
Well, maybe they're dirtier or messier.
They're much dirtier.
A little dirtier.
Bigger, and again, these are the experts.
It was felt that
Jerry produce
there would
eggs
be
you can
more
eat,
of an
duck
impact
eggs?
Yeah, I mean,
with ducks to the
Yes.
neighborhood than there would be.
Certainly.
yeah, this section.
1 acre or larger, what does that reduce?
What about
90%
swans?
of the town can't
Geese.
have a duck?
Geese.
Canadian geese, like they're flying over North Pole.
I think that's absolutely astounding, that we would take 90% of the town, or any huge amount of the town.
Oh, this cracks me up.
Uh-huh.
We're off the rails.
Okay, okay. So, back to seriousness. F is, did you change it to 20?
I did.
Okay.
Do we wanna, I mean, is everyone, the 1 acre, Steve's 1 acre question is there?
I can't believe that would be any different, personally, any different, especially if we're
I don't
going,
know.
only allowing 5 to 10 animals. I don't understand why it couldn't be a 2,000 square foot property.
Well, first of all, how are they, ducks can fly, chickens can't fly as far as I know, right?
They can clip their wings.
Ducks are, people don't allow their personal ducks to
I don't
fly.
know. I mean, you seem to have a lot of knowledge about ducks.
Well, every farm I've ever been on, the ducks were clipped.
We're talking about people's yards, not
I'm talking about yard.
I can't believe anybody would want their ducks to fly away. They've bought these animals to produce eggs, not to fly off to the North Park Lake and create their own family somewhere else.
I'm fine with the recommendation here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now we're, all right, we're going to ignore the experts on the number, but we're going to, I just don't understand the hypocritical nonsense.
This is, okay. 11, I guess you guys want, HI, on the next page, ducks, no ducks shall be allowed in town cows.
Where are we at? Because 11 doesn't mean much. Are we in section 2,
No,
3?
I
Right
said,
before section 3
11
starts.
11 was my number.
Last part of
Um,
section.
H and I are on the top.
Yeah.
I is 11?
2I. No,
Oh.
11 was my number. I'm sorry about that. No ducks shall be, we want that in, okay?
Yeah, so leave that, just stays
Okay.
consistent with your all single family
Right, yeah.
only use.
And the next one is bees.
Are we doing
5?
R1 and 2?
Are we limiting it to 5 bees?
No, yeah, 5 bees. Second one, yeah, R1 and
R1 and 2?
Yep.
Okay. And only under one, only in R1 and R2 zoning districts. Okay, let's see, do I have anything else in there? I said, they defined Africanized honeybees, but then they didn't, all they did was define it in the, in your thing, but they didn't have any place for it. I imagine they wanted, I would add a NAF, EF, no Africanized honeybees should be permitted.
Yeah, I was surprised that that didn't have that provision in there either. I thought maybe I was just missing it. There's a definition of Africanized honeybees, but then it doesn't actually go on to say anything about Africanized honeybees in either the ordinance. So I think we just add a prohibition.
Right, yeah.
No killer bees.
That's all I had. Is that enough?
So that's 6 hives for you start with 2 hives for any parcel, and then up to 6 if you have enough.
Yeah, I have
Is
no
that okay?
feel for it. The guy up the street has bees, but I don't have no feel for it. And the bees just come around their house just to pollinate the flowers, yeah.
And just so I think everyone knows, but these are only for personal use, so the ducks,
Right.
the eggs, the honey, all that stuff, you can't even hang a sign out that says,
Right, for sale.
honey for sale or eggs for sale. This is only
Right.
for personal use.
You wanna keep the 15-foot setback for the hive.
I have no feel for the hives.
50 feet from a swimming pool or kenneled animal and 15 feet from a lot line.
Now with the bees, they're gonna have to go immediately up anyway.
With the flyaway barrier.
Right. Flyway. Flyway. It's gonna stay there. It's not gonna fly away. It's gonna stay there.
Yeah, you just gotta give it a firm talking to.
I
and
gotcha.
They'll listen to you. They're well.
Gotcha, okay, and they'll understand, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Joanne, are you suggesting we put a disciplinary action for the bees?
I think you should.
If they sting you, they're gonna die.
Yeah, that's
pretty
right.
good-
Yeah.
That's pretty bad punishment.
And you really have to be aggressive with bees.
Okay, so we'll have a draft ready for then the next zoning committee meeting, is that the idea, or do we wanna try to push it faster than that?
I didn't want to push it at all. But
I'm glad you actually said that because, we received, criticism in the past because things have moved through and the public has sometimes felt like they haven't received adequate notice or have been aware of things. And so I would just say the watchword here should be caution. This is a significant change.
Well, we have to send it through the planning commission.
Yes,
don't we?
and so I'm saying I
Yeah.
wouldn't shortcut anything,
Yeah.
sir. I'm suggesting that we go through the process carefully and
Right.
Well, it's gonna go on,
deliberately
it's gonna go on the town web.
to ensure that, that.
We rammed the dog thing down our throats in like 6 weeks.
That's exactly,
Okay.
and so we should be very deliberate about this going
Yeah.
forward, I think.
Would you
I
wanna
certainly heard the
Well,
public.
Would you want a draft to go to the planning commission
Yeah, I
for
would
the
want-
October meeting?
We can certainly do that. We can have a draft ready for the October planning commission meeting, and this is a zoning ordinance too, so everyone keep in mind that there will be a public hearing, there will be county
Excellent.
review.
Great.
So this is not gonna happen as quickly as, for instance, the
We
dog
might be able
ordinance
to
could
do it
happen,
in-
because there's all these different procedural requirements before we would adopt it.
Yeah, well, this is a zoning ordinance. I mean, the dog thing was just a
It was a nuisance.
general nuisance.
I don't think we've done anything.
And we've got multiple
Still established
species.
it.
This is a statute that, an ordinance that deals with ducks,
Yeah,
bees,
right. Well,
chickens.
bees are already a lot. I mean,
deals with
they-
chicken
they-
manure, duck manure,
They're
all these,
free-ranging.
all these new concepts.
I mean,
It's the best kind.
Okay.
like
Can we get a number, Bruce? Is there any way to get a number on how many people have less than an acre, or more than an acre lot in
Yeah, we
McCandless?
can do that. Almost every,
R1.
yeah, R1 has, R1 may have acre lots. All the R2s are, almost all the R2s are less than an acre.
I know, I'm at like 39,000 square feet. Which is less than an acre.
Yeah,
They're almost-
43,000 is, 43,000 plus.
Should say almost all the blue
So no,
ones.
so no ducks for anyone on my street.
Almost all the blue ones that are, well, there are some larger ones. But almost all the blue ones with houses on them are smaller.
Nacres,
And more than 50% of the map is blue ones.
Yes.
Nacres 43,560
Oh, I
square
know,
feet.
I know, it's gonna knock out almost everyone.
Well,
I would not
I
be
said that for
surprised,
everybody else.
I would not be surprised if it took out 90% of the town being able to have a duck.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a suggestion, we task either Mr. Betty or our town manager to go back and research why this limitation was placed on ducks?
Yeah.
And why there was such a difference
That's a good-
in
good
distance,
point.
so that
Yeah.
we understand from a factual basis. We're trying to protect the residents and give folks additional opportunity to use their properties. Let's do it in a responsible
Right, but we
way.
can already protect them from ducks not going onto somebody else's property. And a duck, I've never heard a duck in my life, and I've heard thousands of ducks. Never heard a duck be anywhere as noisy as a chicken can be.
Speaking of noise, are we only, chickens are permitted, but not roosters?
No roosters.
No roosters.
No roosters, yeah.
And they are fairly noisy, and they're fairly noisy at a ridiculous time in the morning.
Sex discrimination?
Bruce, what's the packet?
You better watch yourself, because Berkeley, California doesn't even let you say
Pardon?
human or
What was the packet
manhole.
for October PC?
It would have gone out already if there was one, but there wasn't one, so it hasn't gone out. We don't have anything scheduled for the PC.
No, okay.
We still have an opportunity to do this if we want to. But I think we still have some research that we might want to do on this before we
Yeah,
get that
yeah,
far.
definitely. We want to get this.
I'd like to
wanna
know that,
research it
some
more before we
information
send it
on
to
the duck
PC.
issue. Steve's making a fair
So,
point. A
we
lot of
can-
people will be excluded. I'd like to make sure that it's,
This ACCD.
for a good reason.
Certainly don't want to exclude
urban
people
agriculture is a
inadvertently.
Pretty good document. They don't discriminate.
Right.
It's duck, if they call it foul.
So,
That was terrible.
It's true, I'm not making it up.
So we're saying 4,000 square feet,
So it's
if
about
I remember.
half acre to maximize your chickens.
4,000 square feet is a tenth of an acre,
Yeah,
less
it's a
than a tenth of an
Right, but
acre.
that's where you start, but then every 2,000 beyond that. you
Right,
get-
but I don't understand, 4,000 square feet, we're at least right now talking about only 5 to 10 chickens.
No, no.
Well, 3 and 4,000, up to 5,
Well, maybe
but
we should
43,000 before you can have a single duck.
I think you have a good point. I think we should raise it to maybe 10,000 square feet.
Of course, take as many people out of the possibility of having it as possible. Just let's make sure nobody gets to do anything.
We'll research.
Let's make sure we do everything we can to strangle the population with more and more laws. That's a good idea.
Well, we're making a law. We're making a law to allow this.
There should have never been a law not to allow them. That was another mistake.
Oh,
Why don't we go to Berkeley, California? Why don't we look at them?
Is there
No
any-
more manhole,
Wait a
no
second,
more,
wait a second.
no more
Are we-
human,
Are we done with discussion?
no more
let's-
policeman.
That leads the,
Since we're overreaching
is
everywhere,
there
let's
any
do that
question
too.
from the audience? Any comments from the audience? Okay. This concludes the zoning committee hearing. For-
Call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting. Chief's report being item number 2.
Okay, good evening. We had an extremely good month for training, both receiving and training actual people. Now, Dan just left, but it was an excellent training. It was coordinated amongst Dan, myself, Detective Sergeant Egley, David Martin, Officer David Martin also was involved. And we trained the teachers at the North Allegheny Intermediate and the whole staff. In this month's McCandless Crier, we talk about that. We're trying to train anybody that wants to make the protection of their venues better. And we've put together some really nice, and I really commend Detective Egley. He's put together some really nice programs. We also had an opportunity to have excellent training with a gentleman by the name of Colonel David Grossman. He's a world-renowned, international recognized scholar and author and speaker on a world foremost efforts on the field of human violence, especially applicable to juveniles. Lieutenant Hawk, myself, Detective Egley, and our SROs accompanied, and we went and were very inspired by Colonel Grossman, and a rare opportunity to get to meet somebody with his expertise. His insight was invaluable to our training, and a lot of the things that he introduced our SROs are actually going to do. So I don't have anything else more. Everything's posted on the website. Please join us at Community Day. Always just really enjoy seeing everybody. We will have a booth, and we enjoy the interaction with the good public. Respectfully, that's all I have.
Item number 3 is notification of the swearing of Michael J. Cavalier as police officer to the town of McCandless is scheduled to take place at the council's regular business meeting on September 23rd, 2019. Is there any comment from council? Any comment from the public? Hereby close the public, or the Public Safety Committee meeting.
I'd like to call to order the Finance and Personnel Committee. Number 2, review checklisting number 9 dated August 8th, 2019 through September 4th, 2019, totaling $671,258.41, as submitted to each member of council and posted on the bulletin board and town website. Any comments? Number 3, I'd like to refer to Tricia to review the monthly financial summary and dashboard report, please. Thank you.
Good evening, council. You have before you the preliminary August 31st financial dashboard and summary memo. And you'll see that we are performing slightly below budget as compared to prior year. I do anticipate receiving a couple additional items for revenue as well as a couple additional items for expenditures. So we will repost this financial report in October once we have a full month. Some of the timing with this month being an early meeting plus the holiday, some of our information was a little delayed. So nothing of concern yet. We continue to monitor real estate collections. They're slightly behind last year again. That may be related to collections from the holiday, etc. I think we'll have a better picture when we review this again in October. Nothing over concern. We're still averaging. Our revenues have now exceeded expenditures as of the current month. Which is great. We're about that time of the year, which is a good cycle performance. Like I said, we'll be back in October unless you have any questions for me this evening. I'm happy to follow up.
Any comments from council? Questions?
Is there a place on the dashboard that shows that last statistic you just mentioned, revenues versus expenditures?
Yes, sir. If you go to the third box over from the left on the top.
It says net charge change.
Net change in fund balance, the actual, that $1.1 million. You see the revenue. That shows you what the revenue is over expenditures. That 1.1 mil.
And where's I see that, but where's the expenditures?
So here's your expenditures.
Oh, two different boxes.
And here's your revenues. Yes, sir.
Yeah, look at that, and then compare it against, which number am I comparing it against?
If you subtract this one from this one, you get this one.
I got you.
And then this shows you 18. So it shows you how we're slightly behind, but nothing of concern at this point.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions this evening? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tricia. Number 4, acknowledgement that the town has received its minimum municipal obligation, the MMO, for its police and phased out non-uniform defined contribution pension plan. Any questions from council?
That will be acknowledged and approved as part of the business meeting
this month.
We're just waiting on the final numbers. We spoke with the actuary today.
Okay.
So we will be receiving that shortly.
Okay, good. Thank you. Seminars and conferences. I hope you're all aware that we do have a conference in Erie. It's October 3rd through the 6th. This would be the conference that we normally had at Seven Springs. We've decided to switch it this year to see if we can create a little more interest and have more people more council people come. So if you are interested in attending this, please let Marie know so that they can make the reservations for us. Okay? Anybody have a question there? Okay. And Bob, you had something you wanted to say at this point.
Yeah, just one thing, we held the first Technology Advisory Committee meeting earlier, or I guess it was last week now that this is Monday. Just giving the council a heads up that the, one of the first items that the committee is going to be working on is looking at our current service contracts for consulting services, support services for our computer systems, and be looking at RFPs for those services. We're working on putting together a project form that council will be considering next week at the agenda review meeting. Working on language for an RFP, and just reviewing the different conversations that took place during that meeting so that we make sure that we touch base on all of the aspects of the service agreements that we feel are necessary. Security and efficiency were some of the primary items discussed during that meeting, and will be a focus of the RFPs.
Would that mean they would you also be looking at the computers that the council has?
They'll be looking at all of the.
Okay, because some of them are quite a bit older than
Yeah,
others.
it's a function of the age of the computers themselves, but also we'll be looking at software packages, we'll be looking at how they interact with one another, just to make sure that we're as productive as we can be as a staff and as secure as we can be as an organization.
How is that going to be done? I mean, in general, when some of that stuff's highly technical, like computer security, are the people on the committee going to be assessing whether the
People in the community are going to be speaking with staff so that they understand what the software is used for, how we interact amongst ourselves, the information we have to provide to one another. So it will be not only the members of the committee, but the staff working with them to develop that RFP.
What about the technical advisors that are here to, already in place, the people that are the experts on the computer and?
Well, we don't want to listen to the experts, we always want to go with our own gut.
I mean, we're gonna bring people who may be knowledgeable, but they're not software professionals, or,
Well,
I'm not clear on how
Where
that.
where need be, we'll be talking to the software vendors. This is a matter, I think, of just looking contractually and making sure that we're receiving the services that we need at this
That's a
point.
different question, that I agree.
That's essentially what we're going to try to accomplish.
So the committee would not have access to council's computers?
The only thing that the committee will be involved in with the council's computers is the makes and models of the computers and how they're being used.
Not what's on the computer?
Not what's on.
Okay.
Capacity of
Okay.
their functionality.
What are you trying to hide?
From you?
No porn or nothing though, right?
I didn't look at yours.
No porn on mine. You can look at it if you want.
Okay, are you finished, Bob?
I'm done.
Any other comments from council? Comments from the public? Thank you. That concludes the Finance and Personnel Committee. I'd like to call to order the Recreation Committee. Bob will update us on proposed fitness court being partially funded by the National Fitness Campaign, which requires fundraising for the remainder of its cost. Bob?
We held a recent phone conference call with NFC and the Patronicity people who were working on the fundraising aspects of this. Amongst the things that were discussed the potential of extending timeline or creating a multi-tier payment plan to NFC for the fitness court, some of it this year, some of it moving forward into next year. Ideas to to connect with potential sponsors of the program, and they indicated that they were also, NFC was also willing to help us reach out to potential large sponsors. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we have reached out again to UPMC. We'll be reaching out to PNC again to see if there's any interest at this point before.
We're not getting any response
We're
so
not
far?
getting the responses at this point.
Okay. Any other questions about that?
I have one, Madam Chair. If we can't raise the money, hasn't the town invested and committed already in the site preparation for this?
We have not. We've only secured a cost associated with the concrete work. We
That
have
won't
not-
go forward until the project's fully funded?
Absolutely not.
Very good,
So
thank you.
if we don't fund it, then we don't have to do it,
Correct.
right? Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Any other questions? Okay, let's see. Number 3 is update regarding the notorious North Hills event hosted by the Financial Development and Promotional Committee Heritage Center on October 17th at the Rose Barn in North Park. The plans are made and the tickets will be $25. And they are seeking, I guess I should say we are seeking, since I'm on that committee, donations of food and beverages for the event. And you can make your reservations or buy your tickets now. So you can probably call and talk to John.
Absolutely.
And he would take care of that. And we're hoping that as many people as able will come, including all of you out there. So we'd be delighted to have you, and we hope you'll come. So that's Notorious North Hills.
And there are already a good number of tickets that have been sold or
Correct, yes.
reserved, and we believe that we're already at a break-even point for the event,
Right.
so it's good.
Because
It's gonna be a nice
we
event.
did have to make a deposit on
Yes, that's
Rose Barn. So we do need to sell the tickets and hopefully have a large crowd,
I have a question, may I?
certainly.
Could you describe in general terms what this is about? I've somehow along the way I missed, what is this? This is a,
These are things that happened in the North Hills. They're men, I'm assuming they're men, I'm sorry, will come and discuss this, telling what happened
this is a
years
group, and
ago.
is there people that do this at other locations, or what?
Yes.
I mean, who are they? They're just,
It's a presentation that, in essence, outlines what has occurred in North Hills with some of the more notorious characters that have passed through the North Hills over time.
major crimes and that kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, and it's geared around the
Historic-
fact that we're getting close to Halloween, and
Right,
so
that's-
they looked at that as a.
But it's a legitimate presentation.
It's
where
a
you-
legitimate
Oh, yes,
presentation.
yes.
They're gonna say this happened in 1873, or?
Absolutely.
Right, and they'll probably answer questions and so on, so
But they've got a
come with
prepared.
your question.
Yeah, but they've got a prepared script to do this.
Oh, yes.
Takes
yeah.
place at Rose Barn, and we pay $25 a piece, and they,
Correct. And
they
there will be
provide
food and
food.
drinks and,
okay.
okay? So we'll expect you there then, right?
I'm looking at my calendar, I'd like it, it sounds interesting, I certainly wanna support it. I
Good.
hope everybody else does.
Well, we're good.
Are you
We're
gonna be
glad-
there?
Glad to hear.
You're gonna be there, aren't you?
Well, let's hope so. I'm on the committee. Any other
Put me on the
questions?
spot there, John.
Okay, number 4, notification of the community organization recognition of the McCandless Community Association. And that is just a continuation of what we started last month. So that will be for our public meeting. Any other comments by council or questions? Anyone, anything from the public? That concludes the Recreation
What
Committee.
time- Just real quick, what time is that event in notorious, what time does it begin? Is there a time
6
associated?
a.m.
I don't
Gotta
think
be there by
it's-
6.
I don't think it's 6 a.m.
I don't have the time right here.
But it's
Bill,
an
I'm
evening,
sorry.
evening type of event.
Evening.
Yes, it's
Doors
evening.
open at 6:30 and the
6.
event starts at 7.
Okay,
Thank you.
there you go. Okay, any other questions? That concludes the Recreation Committee.
Before we move into executive session, you want to take a break?
Yes.
I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're good.
Okay, break, I'm good.
A second break
I
this
took
meeting.
one. I'm good, I took
Good
one
for
break.
all.
Call
We
for
still
your
need a
ticket
motion.
tomorrow.
Well, I think I will, but it's,
So,
you've got to admit
yeah,
it's
make a
so confusing.
motion.
A second.
It's not self-evident what this thing is.
Mr. Chairman, you want to call for a vote on that motion, move into executive session?
Okay, can we have a vote on it?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
You need Tim.
We set Marie free.
Is Tim out there?